Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something cold, scratchy, and oddly relaxing: how medieval peasants made it through winter without dying. You're wrapped in a tattered wool cloak, breath misting the air inside your own home, and your last onion just sprouted a suspicious beard. Life is rustic. Picture this: a foggy dawn creeping across your village, frost biting at your toes through thin leather boots, and that gnawing dread in your belly whispering, "Did we store enough to survive the fires down to embers?" The wind whistles through the cracks in your wattle and daub wall. The turnips are soft, your hands are calloused, and the dog looks at you less like a pet and more like a potential competitor for scraps. And here's your nightly reminder: you probably wouldn't survive this. Most modern folks wouldn't. You'd be weeping into your oat gruel by day 2. But tonight you'll get to live it safely from the warmth of your bed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the crrrk of cold wood under your body and the unmistakable smell of damp straw. Your fingers are stiff before you even move. It's late autumn. The first real frost fell last night, silvering the thatched rooftops and crunching beneath anyone foolish enough to walk barefoot. You wouldn't dare, though your feet inside wool wrappings barely notice the difference. The cold leaks in regardless. The countryside around you lies in a haze. Bare trees stretch like skeletons across the horizon. The fields are empty, no more barley or rye waving in the wind, just frozen stalks left behind from the harvest. Every morning now begins the same: a quiet, collective panic behind everyone's eyes. Winter isn't coming. It's here. The cabbage you worked so hard to grow now sits buried beneath straw in the root cellar beside knobby carrots and softening onions. You mentally count the stores as you trudge outside to check the sky. If this frost lingers or worsens, you'll need to ration harder. You think about last winter when old Elsbeth traded her wedding ring for a sack of dried peas. You think about how thin she got after that. No one says it aloud, but everyone is calculating the same equation. How many mouths? How much food? How long? You pass by your neighbor's hut. His door is ajar to let smoke escape. They're already cooking something, probably broth from salted pork bones. You catch the scent and your stomach churns in envy. You won't eat until midday, and even then it'll be hard crusts softened in boiled water. A rooster crows late and hoarse, and you chuckle. Even he's not thrilled about starting the day. You walk to the woodshed and grab an armful of logs. They're damp. Everything's damp. There's a trick to stacking them near the hearth just right so they dry without catching fire prematurely. You've burned too much wood too fast in years past. This time you'll make it last. Inside, the fire still smolders in the hearth. You blow on it until it flares to life. That fire, it's your first thought in the morning and your last at night. Without it, the cold creeps in like a silent thief. The kind that doesn't steal your things, just your feeling in your limbs, your energy, your will. It's said that some villagers in the far north never let their hearts die, not even for an hour. A perpetual flame passed down like a family name. Your wife, or maybe it's your mother, hands you a ladle of boiled water lightly flavored with parsnip peelings. You sip it like it's wine. The warmth alone is worth the effort. Outside, children chase each other in rag-wrapped shoes, their laughter barely rising above the silence. They still believe winter is fun, snow icicles and catching flakes on their tongues. They don't yet understand that it's a season of survival. They don't know what it means when you talk about the lean days. The village elder passes by your hut, nodding solemnly. He carries a list in his mind of who survived last winter and who didn't. Historians still argue whether communal knowledge in villages like yours acted as a primitive census or just gossip elevated to ritual. You catch your reflection in the water bucket, pale, sallow. older than you felt a few months ago, but alive. Did you know that the average medieval winter could reduce a healthy family to half its size? The records are vague and the stories vary, but most agree winter was the real landlord in this time, collecting a steep rent from those who dared to live on the margins. Still, there are little victories. A trap you set near the woods caught a hare. Not much meat, but it's something. You'll smoke it tonight, slice it thin, stretch it across days. In a strange way, the hardship is familiar, predictable. You know the patterns, the steps. You're not shocked by the hardship anymore. You prepare, endure, wait. It's the waiting that gets you, and somewhere deep down a strange kind of peace settles in. You've done all you can. The snow will fall, or it won't. The food will last, or it won't. You take another sip of that steaming parsnip water and watch the sky shift colors like an old tapestry. There's beauty in surviving, even if it's boring, muddy, and cold. You run your hand along the inside of the thatched roof, pressing lightly where the damp creeps through. Straw, mud, wattle, and daub. That's all that stands between you and a sky that feels like it's plotting your end. The wind whistles through a hairline crack above the lintel, but you stuff it with rags again, hoping the mouse that chewed it doesn't come back. Also, last winter, the snow collapsed old Marta's roof. She was inside when it happened, crushed by timbers, then buried under snow. She was the first of that season. Everyone still talks about it, but no one's surprised anymore. Roofs are a gamble, especially when the thaw and freeze come back to back. The weight of ice is cruel and slow, like time itself. Your roof isn't much better. The thatch was redone 3 years ago, but only halfway, and rats took the eaves this summer. The patch over the hearth smokes every time it rains, and last week it nearly dripped onto your dried sage bundles. You swore loud enough to make the chickens go silent for an hour. Still, it's yours. This little smoky box. This hut that tries its best. You crouch down and adjust the rocks around the fire. The hearth is low and blackened with soot caking the beam above it. You whisper to the flames like they're old friends, coaxing them higher. You've learned how to read them, not just the heat, but the color, the sound. Blue means dry wood. Hissing means wet logs. Popping. Probably beetles you missed. It's not glamorous, but knowing your fire's language is more useful than Latin these days. As you tend the fire, you glance up. A spiderweb dances in the corner, sparkling with frost. You'd wipe it down, but honestly, it's doing a better job insulating the gap than you could. Later, you'll push the straw mattress closer to the wall with the least drafts, but that comes with trade-offs. Closer to the wall means colder ground. Further from the fire, but fewer breezes. It's all compromises, like a chess game against nature where you only ever move one piece at a time. People think insulation didn't exist in the Middle Ages, but that's only half true. You had insulation, you just were the insulation. You wore it, you slept in it, you shoved it in the holes. Moss, straw, horsehair. Anything fibrous. Some say the Scots used seaweed stuffed into crevices to block wind. Historians still argue whether it worked or just smelled funny. You walk outside again, stomping the frozen dirt flat with your boots. The sun is up now, though. Up feels generous. It hangs low and pale in the sky, barely casting shadows. You check the roof from the outside. It leans a little like a drunk, trying to stay dignified. You mutter a quiet threat at it. Just get through March. At the corner, you inspect the wooden beam where rain tends to collect. It's soft again. Rot. You poke it with your knife, more give than you'd like. You'll need to prop it, maybe wedge another board underneath. You think of how your cousin fixed his roof with an old door once. That door led to nowhere, and it's still the best repair job in the village. Your hands start to lose feeling, so you head back in. The smoke from your own chimney greets you like a handshake. Familiar. A little itchy in the lungs, but better than frostbite. Inside, the air's warmer now. Not warm, just less biting. You rub your hands together and press them toward the fire. Your fingers are cracked again, especially around the knuckles. You'd rub goose fat on them if you hadn't already used it for yesterday's stew. There's a bowl on the shelf with a little wax left. Candles are rationed more strictly than bread. You break a sliver off and hold it to the flame. It sputters but catches. The room softens in the glow. Shadows flicker on the beams. You see outlines of everything: hanging herbs, drying boots, a child's wooden spoon, a patched cloak folded twice on the bench. And then you hear it, the drip. That maddening, rhythmic drip from the corner where the thatch meets the frame. The I told you so of water. You grab the old clay pot and slide it under. You already know the sound will haunt your sleep, but at least it won't soak your only dry blanket again. You sit finally and breathe. It's quiet now. Your bones settle into their usual creaks and groans. You're not young, you're not old. You're in that dangerous in-between where no one calls you strong anymore, but they still expect you to carry things. And so you do. You rest your head against the cold wooden wall and stare at the ceiling. You think about how your ancestors probably slept under stars without roofs at all. You imagine that was simpler. Then again, they also probably died before 30. You reach up and touch the ceiling beam above, solid, for now. For roof repairs are a community effort, but they come with a price. Help now and they'll help you later. Maybe. Or they'll forget. Or they'll ask for something you don't have. Or you'll owe them favors until you're too bent back to repay. Nothing's free. Not even goodwill. You hear a cough from the other room. Someone else is awake. Time to get on with the day. But first you look up one more time at that old, patchy, uneven thatch. It's ugly, imperfect, and possibly the only reason you're still alive. You reach for your tunic, the thick one, with the lumpy seams and mysterious stains that no one in the house dares to identify anymore. It's rough against your skin wool, spun thick by your aunt last spring, dyed with walnut husks and impatience. It smells faintly of smoke, sweat, and comfort. This is your armor now. Dressing for winter is not about fashion. It's a defensive maneuver. You layer up like a walking onion shirt. Tunic, second tunic, fur wrap if you're lucky. Hose that never quite match one, always sagging below the knee. Woolen bindings tied around your calves, boots stuffed with straw. You wear everything you own and still the cold finds a way in. Always. Your hands slide into mittens made from scraps, patched leather palms, and a lining of something vaguely resembling rabbit. One of the fingers is sewn shut. You don't mind. You're not planning on doing anything delicate today. There's no embroidery in this weather, just survival. You watch as your youngest tries to wrap a scarf around their face. It's not really a scarf, just a strip of old curtain, but it does the job, keeps the wind from biting too deep. They're learning. Everyone learns eventually, or they don't, and they don't last long. You're not alone in this strange winter fashion show. Outside the village looks like a gathering of sentient haystacks. People waddle more than walk layers, so thick they can barely bend. Fashion historians might call it rustic elegance. You call it not freezing to death. Some say the nobility in castles had better gear, fur-lined cloaks, imported silks, embroidered wool, but let them try mucking out a pigsty and fox fur. You'll take your raggedy pelts and freedom of movement, thank you very much. Speaking of pigs, you step into the pen and give a few claps. They grunt at you, half buried in straw. Steam rises from their bodies in lazy swirls. You envy them. Pigs run hot. You once considered sleeping in the sty during the worst frost just for the warmth. Historians still debate whether peasants actually did this or just joked about it until someone cracked. Your breath fogs in front of you as you haul a bucket of water from the well. It's slushy today, thick with ice shards. You chip at the rim with a stick, muttering to yourself. Water's heavier when it's nearly solid somehow. No one tells you that. Back inside, the layers do their job for a while, but eventually sweat starts to gather at your back right between your shoulder blades. That's the curse of winter layering. It's not a matter of staying warm. It's managing how you're warm. Move too much and the sweat will chill you faster once you stop. You remember when your cousin caught Og that way, working hard, sweating through his tunic, then sitting down in the breeze. By morning, he couldn't feel his legs. By nightfall, he couldn't feel anything. You try not to think about that. Instead, you adjust your belt, cinching everything tighter so your layers don't flap when you walk. It cuts into your stomach, but at least your sleeves won't ride up. You hate that. Cold wrists are somehow worse than cold toes. More insulting. And what about undergarments? You chuckle at the thought. There's a loin wrap, sure, and maybe old linen if you're fancy. But laundry in winter is a joke. You don't clean your clothes, you just freeze the stink out of them. Hang them outside overnight, let the cold do its thing. It doesn't smell better, but it feels less moist. And that's something. You add another shawl before heading out again. This one used to be your grandmother's. It's more whole than wool now, but it smells like time and ash and safety. You drape it around your shoulders like a knight's cloak. No one would dare laugh. Everyone's doing the same, borrowing from the dead, from the past, from anything that once held warmth. Out in the village square, you see the usual suspects. Old Bernard with his felt hat that's older than sin. The cooper's wife in a layered skirt so stiff it walks half a second after she does. The priest shuffling past with hands hidden in voluminous sleeves, looking for all the world like a walking tapestry. Everyone greets each other with the same frozen smile and the same question, cold enough for you. It's not funny. It never was. But we say it anyway. One boy runs past you wearing only a single boot. You hear his mother shouting after him in colorful language. He'll learn. Either that or frostbite will teach him. Some lessons don't need books. You help push a cartwheel stuck in the frozen rut outside the blacksmith's place. The metal glows faintly red even in this chill. His forge is the warmest spot in town, but he charges in firewood. You wonder if it's worth trading your last bundle. Probably not. Back home, you peel off one layer, just one, because your armpits have started their own microclimate. Underneath your tunic is damp and scratchy. The fibers dig into your skin like judgmental ants. You scratch idly, then stop. Too much scratching in winter leads to bleeding, and you've only got so much cloth for bandages. You sit by the hearth again, arms folded, eyes scanning the room like a tired guard. Everyone's quiet now, conserving warmth, conserving energy. Even the baby has stopped fussing. Wrapped in so many layers, you're not entirely sure there's still a baby in there. You smile to yourself. It's a tired smile, but it counts. You made it through another day. Another day layered in wool, wrapped in fatigue, stitched together by the simple need to keep going. Your scarf itches, your socks slide, your belt pinches, but you're warm, mostly. You open the cellar door slowly. The cold that rises up feels different, stiller, heavier. Not the biting wind of outside, but a dense, moist chill that sinks into your chest and makes you wonder if ghosts really do linger in root cellars. The steps creak beneath your boots as you descend, holding the stub of a tallow candle in front of you. Shadows stretch long and lean across earthen walls. This is where your winter survival is measured, not in days or hours, but in turnips. You crouch beside the bins, lifting the sackcloth from the top layer. A few potatoes have begun to wrinkle. The onions are holding strong, though one has sprouted cheeky thing, thinking it's spring. You pluck it and set it aside. That'll go in the stew tonight, sprouts and all. Waste not. The carrots are softening, but edible. You sniff one. Smells like dirt and hope. You dig deeper into the bin, checking for rot. A single bad one can start a chain reaction. Your hands fumble in the dark until they land on something unexpected, an apple forgotten. You blink. It's wrinkled beyond recognition, but you cradle it like treasure. Because it is. That apple, friends, is your dessert. You stash it in your pocket for later, not telling anyone. That's your secret joy, your midnight miracle. Historians still argue whether food hoarding in peasant homes was common or frowned upon. But in your case, you don't care. That apple is yours. You move to the drying rack next. Beans strung on twine, garlic braided and hung like fragrant armor. a smoked fish half-eaten dangling from a hook. You count your dried peas in their earthen jar. Not many. Enough for 2 more soups if stretched with barley. Maybe 3 if you add stones and call it mineral broth. You check your barrel sauerkraut and pickled beets. The kraut smells like it's alive. You wince and seal the lid tighter. Fermentation is a mystery to you, but it seems to keep things edible, mostly. Then you kneel by the back wall where the salted meats are kept. A small cut of pork, wrapped in cloth. It's gray around the edges, but the salt has done its job. You run your fingers along the twine, binding it, and think of the pig it once belonged to. You remember the slaughter. You remember the screaming. You push the thought away. You can't eat memories. Back upstairs, you lay out your findings. Your family gathers. Tonight's supper will be thick barley porridge with onion, a few carrot slices, and a touch of pork fat scraped from the salt slab. No one cheers, but no one sighs either. That's the best review you get in winter. You stir the pot slowly, letting the steam curl into your face. It warms your nose. You imagine you're rich, adding spices, maybe leeks, even a turn of pepper. But you're not rich. You're practical. You stir until your arm aches. Bread. That's the other half of the feast. You retrieve a loaf from the pantry shelf. It's more stone than sponge now. Coarse rye. Dense. Hard enough to be a weapon. You tap it on the table and everyone flinches. You crack it in half with effort, then soak it in broth until it yields. You remember when you first learned to make bread. The way the dough stuck to your fingers. The smell of yeast rising under a towel. That was in summer when the air was kind and flour was plentiful. Now you measure every scoop like you're borrowing from spring. There's a joke told only during the harshest weeks that you don't bite medieval bread, you negotiate with it. You smirk to yourself as you serve the slices half floating in stew like reluctant ships. You sit and eat, no talking, just chewing, the scrape of spoons. A child coughs, someone sneezes, but the food goes down, and for a moment the world narrows to the quiet clink of wood on clay. When you finish, you scrape the pot clean, not out of cleanliness, but out of need. Every crust counts. Every smear of fat is licked with reverence. You boil a bit of water to loosen the bit stuck to the bottom and drink it like soup. It's called pot liquor, and it's sacred. Did you know some records from monastic kitchens detailed exactly how much pot liquor each brother could receive 4 ounces? No more. You wonder how strictly that was enforced. As you clean up, you reach into your pocket and remember the apple. You glance around. Everyone's turned in, wrapped in blankets, murmuring in half-sleep. You sneak outside. The night air cuts like a blade. Stars glitter through bare tree limbs and your breath drifts skyward. You sit on the chopping block, the apple in your lap. You don't eat it right away. You hold it, feel the weight of it, smell the faint sweetness under the wrinkled skin. Then you take the first bite. It's mealy, soft, tart, but it's fresh. It tastes like sun, like wind, like memory. You close your eyes and chew slowly, letting it flood your mouth with the impossible sensation of summer. It's gone too fast. You wipe your fingers on your tunic and exhale. A dog howls somewhere in the woods. The wind rattles the branches. But for a moment, you're full. And not just in the belly. You return to the house quiet as snowfall. There's a strange power in your cellar, not just food, not just jars and sacks and bins, but a promise, a plan, a stubborn insistence that you will make it, that your last onion won't be your last breath, and that wrinkled apple. That's proof that something sweet can survive even this. You step over the threshold carefully, not wanting to wake anyone. The fire's a soft pulse in the hearth, now coals glowing faintly under a crust of ash. You squat low, stir it with the iron poker, and feed it 2 sticks from the pile near your feet. It accepts them with a soft crack and sigh of heat. This fire is your life. You've said it before, whispered it to yourself during long nights. If the fire dies, we die with it. There's no fireplace grate, no cast iron stove, no neatly arranged logs like in paintings. Just a shallow pit of stone and a desperate rhythm feed. Wait, breathe, repeat. Keeping it alive is a skill passed down like stories. You learned it from your uncle who lost his eyebrows once trying to reignite damp kindling with too much mead and a bad idea. You lay a few dry twigs gently across the coals. The flame catches a lazy flicker that grows bolder. You sit back on your heels, satisfied. Not a roaring fire, but enough. You don't need roaring, you need constant. Someone stirs behind you, your eldest shifting under the fir throw. They cough twice, dry and shallow. You wince. Not again. Not that cough. You tuck them in tighter, pulling the blanket over their ears. No fever yet. You check by pressing your hand to their forehead, warm but not burning. Still you feel that dread thud in your stomach. Winter coughs are how things begin. You remember last year. The twins from the hut near the stream started with a wheeze, ended in silence. You tell yourself this will pass. You hope you're right. You turn back to the fire and nudge it again, whispering encouragements like it's a sleeping child. You've seen what happens when it goes out. Matches don't exist. Tinder boxes take time. If you let it die, it might not come back until midday, and by then someone else might not wake up. Some villages keep a communal flame watched over by elders or monks. They say it's sacred, never extinguished, always ready. Historians still debate whether this was a real tradition or just religious propaganda to keep people from blaming God for frozen toes. In your home, there's no monk, no sacred flame, just you. And this temperamental pile of glowing wood. You move the fire guard, a bent scrap of metal hammered into shape, and place your wet boots nearby. Not too close. You learned that lesson 2 years ago when you set a pair steaming and woke to find them curled like blackened fruit peels. The smell alone lasted weeks. Boots are precious. Yours are hand-me-downs from a cousin you haven't seen since the last fair. One of the soles is patched with a flap of boiled leather that flaps if you walk too fast. You stuff it with wool in the mornings, tied tight with twine. It works. Sort of. You lean back against the wall, stretching your legs out toward the heat. The boards creak under your weight. You wonder how long before the floor gives out. It was never built for comfort, just shelter. You stare into the fire. You've been doing that more lately, letting the flames do the thinking for you. They flicker like memories, move like thoughts. You can see stories in them if you squint. The time your sister fell into the duck pond. The time your father caught a goose with his bare hands. The time you danced at harvest drunk on cider and foolishness. Now cider is a luxury, but you'd trade a day's labor for a single sip, maybe more. You close your eyes and imagine the warmth of summer on your back, the weight of sunlight. You remember the way the grass tickled behind your knees when you lay down in a field and forgot what month it was. Then the wind groans outside, snapping you back. You get up and check the shutters. They're tied tight, but the top hinge sags. You wedge a bit of firewood under it, just enough to hold through the night. Outside, the world is wrapped in frost. Trees look like ghosts of themselves. The well has iced over again. You'll chip it open at dawn. You hear a howl far off. Wolf, maybe. Or just the wind pretending. Either way, it makes your heart beat faster. You return to the hearth, add another stick, and sigh. You know you'll be doing this again in a few hours. The fire doesn't care if you're tired. It wants what it wants, like a cranky toddler or a nobleman's debt. And then there's the smoke. Always the smoke. No chimney here, just a smoke hole in the roof that clogs when snow piles up. On good days, the smoke rises straight out. On bad days, it circles your head like a bored ghost. You cough again, wave it away. You've heard that in wealthier homes there were flues and flaps and proper airflow, but you don't have wealth. You have blankets and straw and luck. You settle into your straw mat again, wrapping your cloak tight. You glance once more at the fire, it's steady. You close your eyes. And then from the back corner, the log shifts and splits with a pop, a little firework in the quiet. You smile, eyes still closed. The fire is still alive. So are you. You wake before the sun, not because you're disciplined, but because the cold has crept into your bones and whispered that staying still any longer would be a mistake. The fire is low again, no surprise. You reach out a stiff hand, stir the coals, and feed in one of the last dry twigs from last night's bundle. It hisses, then catches. Good fire. Obedient fire. For now. Today you have a singular, noble goal. Bread. That humble, hard, tooth-cracking miracle that makes winter survivable. But baking bread in winter, that's no small feat. The yeast is sluggish, the flour is precious, and the dough refuses to rise unless it's practically sung to. You start by fetching the flour sack. It's tied and tucked up high away from mice and small fingers. You carry it like treasure. Because it is. The flour is coarse barley and rye ground at the village mill, and you can still feel the bits of chaff in it. You measure it by eye, by feel, by gut. No scales, no cups. Just instinct and old whispers from your grandmother's kitchen days. You add water from the kettle, still warm from the fire. Salt, just a pinch too much, and you'll be accused of extravagance. Then comes the leaven, carefully scraped from a pot on the shelf, a sticky, sour lump of dough saved from the last bake. You cradle it like a child. This sourdough starter is older than your youngest, maybe older than you. You mix everything in a bowl made of wood that's warped and cracked, but it knows its job. Your hands plunge into the dough, folding, pressing, turning. It's sticky, cold, reluctant. Like everything else this season, you knead in silence. The dough resists, then surrenders. You feel your body warming just from the effort. There's something therapeutic about this, the rhythm of it, the fight, of the victory. You think about nothing for once, just dough. Then you cover it with a cloth and set it near the fire to rise, or at least try. This part is where hope lives. But hope is shy in winter. Sometimes the dough just sits there, stares back at you, and you stare at it too, stubborn lumps, unwilling to change. You remember what happened last time it didn't rise. You baked it anyway. It came out the size of your fist and dense enough to injure someone. Your neighbor joked it could double as a doorstop. You didn't laugh. You were too hungry. You take a sip of weak ale, not because it's morning ale hour or anything fancy like that. It's just safer than water. The village well is frozen again, and the last time someone tried drinking stream water, they spent the evening praying and the morning groaning. Ale is the common drink not for pleasure but for preservation. Historians still argue whether medieval ale was truly weak or if people were just very good at holding their liquor. Either way, it warms you more than the fire does. You pull your cloak tighter and glance toward the dough. Still nothing. Outside, you hear the creak of a cartwheel and the crunch of boots in frozen mud. Someone's already up. Probably the shepherd. He likes to brag that the sheep have warmer beds than the rest of us. You believe him. Wool is the one thing that makes life bearable now. You check the dough again. A puff, maybe. A slight dome. Enough to get your hopes up. You stoke the fire, adding twigs and blowing gently until the heat rises. The whole house smells faintly of wood smoke, wet wool, and now slowly bread. You set a clay baking dish near the embers, shaped like a shallow bowl. No ovens here, just coals, stones, and skill. You flip the dough into it and cover it with a hot iron lid weighed down with embers on top. A peasant's Dutch oven passed down for generations. And then you wait. Baking bread is a quiet war. You wait and you don't peek. You hope. You don't hope too loudly. You trust. You ignore the doubt creeping in. Meanwhile, you sweep the floor with a bundle of twigs. It doesn't help much. The dirt just rearranges itself smugly. You check the baby, still asleep. One foot has wriggled out from the blanket. You tuck it back in gently, feet are the first to freeze. Always the feet. A knock on the door. You open it a crack and see your neighbor Anselm bundled in so many layers he looks like a rolled-up rug. He grunts, holds up a chunk of salt pork. "Trade?" he asks. You nod. You've got some pickled beets he's fond of. The trade is quiet, respectful. No one wants to admit how little they have. But the exchange helps. It's the web that holds the village together. Small kindnesses, small debts, unspoken understanding. Back to the fire. You listen carefully. Is that crackling? A faint, yeasty scent. You lift the lid just a bit. The crust has risen, browned, maybe even crisp. You blink. Miracles do happen. You pull it from the heat and let it rest on a cloth. It steams. You break it gently. The inside is dense, yes, but tender. Warm. Alive. Your eldest shuffles over and eyes it like it's gold. You give them a piece. Their face softens. That's the real reward, not the food, but the way it softens faces. You tear off a hunk for yourself. It's still hot and the crust bites back a little. You chew slowly, closing your eyes. It tastes of fire, of effort, of everything you've been holding together all season. You made bread, in this cold, with those odds. It doesn't get better than this. The bread is barely cooled when everyone begins to gravitate toward it, noses twitching like wary animals catching the scent of survival. You dole out slices with practiced precision, ensuring the smallest hands get theirs first. There's no butter, of course, no honey, no jam, just bread. But today, that's more than enough. After the last crumb disappears, you gather the family around the hearth, not to rest comes later, but to huddle, for warmth, for necessity. You all sleep in a pile because single beds are a joke and body heat is medieval currency. You're the center tonight, wrapped in your cloak, pressed between your youngest and your cousin, snoring back. It's close. Too close. But the kind of closeness you've gotten used to. The kind where knees press into ribs, where snores are lullabies, and where someone's foot always ends up under your leg like a misplaced potato. The fleas make themselves known almost immediately. You scratch at your collar, try to ignore the crawling sensation. Everyone has fleas. Everyone. You've stopped trying to fight them. Even the Lord's Manor has them, they just pretend theirs are more sophisticated. You remember when you once asked a traveling friar why God made fleas. He said it was to remind us that pride has no place near skin. You nodded solemnly while scratching behind your ear with the fire poker. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly accepted parasites as a fact of life or whether they just lost the will to fight. You personally believe it's a little of both. Your mind drifts to the mattress beneath you. Not that it deserves the name. It's a canvas sack stuffed with straw, flattened into submission by years of weight and dreams. Every time someone moves, the whole bed shifts with a creak and a crunch. But you've known worse. You once spent an entire winter sleeping on rushes over cold stone, your back never quite the same afterward. The fire's glow dances across the ceiling beams. Smoke curls upward, slow and dreamy. You count the flickers like stars. 1, 2, 3. Then lose count when someone coughs behind you, wet and persistent. You tense. That's the same cough from earlier. You sit up slightly and listen. It fades. Just a cough. Just the cold playing tricks. You lie back down, curling tighter. Outside, a wind moans through the trees and the shutters clatter softly. You can smell snow on the air. It's coming again. You shift, pressing your face against the shoulder of whoever's next to you. You can't even tell no more. Everyone's bundled in the same wool layers like mismatched puppets. You try to sleep, but your mind refuses to settle. It wanders instead to summer fields, to berry picking, to the smell of wet earth under your nails. You miss that smell. Everything now just smells like smoke and damp wool. There's a kind of time dilation in winter nights. Minutes stretch like taffy. Hours double in length. You dream, then wake, then drift again, unsure whether you've slept at all. A rooster crows too early or maybe too late. It's hard to tell. You can't see the sky. In the dark, someone whispers a prayer. Not loud, not pleading, just habit. Something mumbled about keeping the fire strong, the food lasting, and the wolves away. You silently join in. No one hears you, but the words taste like comfort. Eventually, morning begins to leak into the room, not with sunlight, because there is none, but with a lighter shade of gray pressing at the edges of everything. You blink, sit up slowly. Your joints crack like twigs underfoot. Everyone else is stirring too. You hear yawns, groans, and the rustle of blankets being shrugged off like old regrets. Someone sneezes. A child burps. You smile barely. Breakfast is a mystery this morning. You haven't decided yet whether it's worth trying to make more porridge or just chew on yesterday's crusts. Someone suggests gruel. You pretend not to hear, but first you rise and stretch, shake out your limbs, and then you sweep aside the curtain that acts as your door and step outside. The air hits you like a slap. It's colder than yesterday. The snow has dusted everything in a thin white veil, not deep, but just enough to make everything look like it was dipped in powdered sugar and then forgotten. You breathe in. The world smells clean, empty. Your feet crunch against the frozen ground. You stamp them a few times more out of ritual than warmth. Then you make your way to the coop. The chickens are huddled together, feathers puffed out in mutual annoyance. One clucks angrily at you as you reach beneath her and pull a warm egg from the nest. You whisper an apology. That egg is today's gold. You return inside, holding it in both hands like it might vanish. Everyone watches as you crack it into the pan over the fire. The sizzle is scandalous. Half the family leans forward in disbelief. One egg, one pan. You scramble it lightly, then divide it into spoonfuls. Everyone gets a taste, just a taste. Your youngest looks like they've seen heaven. Later you'll laugh about it, but right now it's sacred. That's how mornings go. You wake in a pile of people, scratch a little whisper, a prayer, steal a bit of warmth from the fire, and hope the egg doesn't crack before it hits the pan. You made it through the night. That's all that matters. And tomorrow you'll do it again. Your boots squish into frozen muck as you make your morning round behind the cottage. The path from your door to the animal shelter is slick with a mixture of ice manure and good intentions. You've slipped here before twice in 1 week last year. The bruise took until Easter to fade, and the memory still hurts more than your tailbone. The cow lowing inside the lean-to doesn't care about your dignity. She's cold, she's hungry, and she's staring at you like you should have been here 5 minutes ago. You grunt a greeting and push the wooden latch open. It sticks, then gives. A gust of warm, sour breath escapes the stall. There she is, your girl. Big brown eyes, thick coat mood, unimpressed. She shifts her weight and snorts. The floor is layered with old straw and fresh offerings. You mentally mark it for a change later. Not now. You're just here to check her feet, refill her bucket, and reassure her that yes, you still remember she exists. She's not just a cow, she's the cow. Your cow. Your warmth machine, your milk and dung provider, your insurance policy with 4 legs and a tendency to kick if touched without warning. You run your hand along her flank. She's thinner than you'd like. You're all thinner than you'd like. You've been feeding her stored hay brought in by cart before the first snow. It's almost gone. You'll start mixing in the dry leaves soon. She won't like it. You won't either. But there's not much left to complain to. Your bucket clangs as you scoop some water from the chipped barrel out front. It's more slush than liquid. She drinks anyway. Then you move on to the chickens. They squawk at your arrival, more indignant than grateful. You toss them the last of the grain mixture. It scatters over the straw like precious seeds, and in a way it is. Every mouthful they eat is one you can't reclaim. Still, the trade is fair. They give you eggs heat, the occasional bug-free floorboard. You give them feed, shelter, and protection from foxes. You glance toward the far tree line. A line of tracks cuts through the snow, too large for rabbit. Could be a dog. Could be worse. You make a mental note to check the fence tonight. Back inside, your boots come off with a squelch. They land by the fire soul, steaming faintly. You sit on a stool, rubbing your hands together. The warmth seeps in slowly like reluctant friendship. Then comes the worst chore of the morning, cleaning the chamber pot. You sigh. You'd hope someone else would beat you to it. No such luck. You carry it out with a grimace and dump the contents into the designated pit near the back hedge. The smell reminds you again that winter is not a clean season. It's a season of tolerances, of doing the least disgusting thing before the most disgusting becomes necessary. You pass your neighbor's house on the way back. Their doors slightly open, a thick fur acting as a curtain. You call out softly. No answer. You hear someone coughing inside, that rattling, deep kind of cough. You keep walking. There's nothing you can do. You pause at the well. The surface is frozen solid again. You take the iron rod you keep nearby and slam it down. The ice resists, then cracks, with a satisfying crack. You scoop out what water you can. It smells faintly of iron, but it's clear. This is your rhythm now. Wake, feed, water, fire, scrape, repeat. You wonder sometimes how peasants survived this century after century. The answer is they didn't always. Some winters were worse than others. Some years had wolves, famines, plagues, and yet someone always survived, enough to keep the line going. Historians still argue whether survival was due more to community networks or dumb luck. You personally vote for both, and also a bit of sheer ugly stubbornness. Back inside, someone's trying to whistle. It's a child, maybe yours, maybe borrowed. The melody is off-key and aimless, but it fills the space. You don't stop them. Noise is good. Noise means life. You tear off a hunk of leftover bread and chew. It's dry. Chewier today. Your jaw aches. You dip it into a mug of lukewarm ale. It softens. You check your herb shelf. The chamomile is almost gone. The mint turned black weeks ago. You've still got some dried sage and nettles, though. Enough to steep something if someone gets a fever. It's not medicine, really, but it's something to do with your hands while worrying. You stare out the window, if you can call it that. Just a hole covered in oiled linen. The light behind it is soft and gray. No sun, just more cold, waiting. Still, the wind has calmed. You grab a carving knife and sit by the fire. There's a block of wood you've been working on, shaving it into a spoon for the baby. Not because they need one, but because carving is quiet and quiet is rare. The shape begins to emerge again beneath your hands. A curve here, a notch there. You smile. Outside, someone is calling your name. You sigh. Wrap your cloak around your shoulders and prepare to step out again. Because winter doesn't care how tired you are. It just keeps asking. And you keep answering. You answer the call without haste. No one shouts in winter unless it matters. You step into your boots, still damp, still cold, and tug your cloak tighter as you open the door. The chill smacks you like a bucket of snow melt. It's your neighbor's boy standing at the edge of your threshold with red cheeks and frantic eyes. He's breathing hard, one mitten missing, and a smear of something mud soot across his forehead. She's asking, he pants. About the meat. You nod. You know exactly what meat he means. The squirrel. Earlier that week, your youngest caught one near the woodpile, rare luck in a season when even the rats are hiding. You didn't cook it right away. You skinned it, salted it, and hung it in the cool corner of the lean-to, meant for leaner days. Apparently the leaner day has come for someone else. You follow the boy to their cottage. His mother meets you at the door, face, drawn lips, dry and cracked. She's holding her toddler, who's limp in her arms, eyes half-lidded. There's a rattle in the child's chest that sends a shiver deeper than the wind. You don't wait to be asked again. You turn back home, retrieve the squirrel, and wrap it in a cloth. It's not much, barely enough for broth, but it's protein. It's something. You don't even think about what it means to give away meat. You just do it. On the way back, you wonder, will it make a difference? One squirrel, one tiny wild thing. Historians still argue whether acts like these were common or exceptional, whether peasant solidarity was real or romanticized, whether the bonds of winter hardship forged communities or broke them apart. You have your answer. You couldn't keep the meat knowing the child might not wake. When you return, she doesn't speak, just takes the bundle from your hands with a nod and vanishes inside. That's enough. You stand in the frost a moment longer. The winds picked up again. The sun never really came out today, just a pale smear behind clouds. Back home, you peel off your cloak and hang it near the hearth. The fire's still going, bless it. You toss in a small log, one of the dry ones you've been saving. You don't say why. The others are up and moving. Someone's boiling a bit of millet. Someone else is mending socks with a needle so bent it could qualify as modern art. You join them in silence. The day passes in tasks. You patch a leak in the corner wall with moss and a handful of wax. You chase a chicken out from under the bench. You rewrap your feet with fresh cloth. You barter 2 shriveled apples for a bit of lard from old Bernard, who insists it's still good because fat doesn't freeze like lies. You believe him, mostly. At midday, the church bell rings, not for mass, but for a funeral. You don't go. Not out of coldness, but because the cold is real and your boots are barely holding together. You say your prayer by the fire. That's enough. The smell of wood smoke clings to everything now. It's in your hair, your clothes, your breath. You joke once that if the house ever catches fire, no one will notice. They laugh, then stop. It's too close to true. You check the squirrel corner, the space where it used to hang. Empty now. There's something sobering about that. A reminder that even small miracles have an end. By dusk, the sky turns a deep blue, the kind that almost looks warm if you didn't know better. A bird flits across the snowfield. Just one. You wonder what it's looking for. You sip hot water flavored with beetroot peel. Not tea, not even broth. Just warm. That's enough. As night falls, you gather everyone again by the hearth. You sit shoulder to shoulder, sharing heat and breath and quiet. Someone sings softly. A lullaby, maybe, or a prayer. You lay back eyes on the ceiling, which still leaks in the corner. You make a note to patch it tomorrow, or the next day. You dream of squirrel stew, of a table full of bread, of a spring that comes early and doesn't trick you by snowing in April. But mostly you just sleep, because today you gave away meat, and tonight that's what makes you human. The fire's down again. Of course it is. You wake to a room that smells of smoke and cold earth and the dim orange of a dying ember casting faint shadows across bundled figures. Your still half asleep body aching from the stone floor and stiff straw. But instinct gets there first. You sit up, toss your legs over the side of the sleeping pile, and begin the ritual of coaxing life back into the hearth. Kneel, breathe, poke, add twigs. Whisper a few curses under your breath, nothing too harsh, just enough to keep the flame humble. There it is, a flicker, then another. The ember glows brighter, like it was only pretending to die. You smile grimly. You do that too sometimes. As the fire grows, so does the scent of something sharp, sour. You sniff the air and realize someone's moved the sauerkraut too close to the heat. You slide the crock away and tighten the lid. The last thing you need is the whole room smelling like pickled cabbage at sunrise. Though honestly, what doesn't smell like that these days, someone stirs behind you. A cough, then a sneeze, then the slow shuffling sound of bare feet against cold stone. Your oldest child joins you by the hearth, wrapping a blanket around their shoulders like royalty and sitting in silence. You pass them a cup of warm water. They take it without a word. That's how mornings work here, quiet and mechanical. Not because you don't love each other, but because the work begins before the words do. Today, the first snow has truly settled in. Not a light dusting, not the flirtation of flurries. No, this is the thick white silence of real winter. Outside, the thatched roofs are bowed under its weight, and the path to the well has disappeared beneath a soft, deceptive blanket. Pretty, deadly. You lace your boots and prepare yourself mentally for the first real shoveling. Not that you have a shovel. You'll use the flatboard you found last spring, the one you've nailed a bit of leather to as a makeshift grip. You step outside and the cold slaps you. You're ready for it now, so you don't flinch. Much. Every footstep crunches. You exhale steam and thick clouds. The snow is light on top, packed like old bread underneath. You begin clearing the path from your door to the well, then the door to the animal shelter, then the outhouse. Each stroke takes strength you don't think you have, but you do. You find it, because there's no other option. Halfway through, the wind picks up. It slices across your cheeks like knives. You stop, wipe your nose with the edge of your sleeve, and look up. The sky is that painful kind of blue. Empty, bright, beautiful in a way that dares you to complain. Across the path, you see Marta, the widow with 3 children, shoveling with what looks like a broken bread paddle. She catches your eye. Neither of you waves, you just nod. That's the wave. That's the... Inside again, you strip off your outer layer snow, clinging to the hem like burrs. Your youngest greets you with a hopeful look. No words, just eyes wide and expectant. You shake your head. Nothing fresh. Their shoulders drop and they return to their corner. You want to give them more. A piece of meat, a honey cake, a story that isn't wrapped in frost. But today you have none of those things. What you do have is a half handful of oats, a chunk of stale bread, and the resolve to make it into something that feels like a meal. You soak the oats in warm water, then mash the bread into it until it thickens. Someone calls this poor man's porridge. You think it's too generous a name, but you serve it anyway and the bowls are scraped clean. Later you sit by the fire with your carving again. The spoon is coming along, curved just right, smooth on the inside. You begin notching the handle, adding tiny patterns, not because they matter, but because it gives your hand something kind to do. The children play a game in the corner, stacking small stones and calling them sheep. One child plays the wolf. There's laughter, real laughter, and you let it fill the room like sunlight. Even the baby gurgles a bit, eyes bright for the first time in days. You lean back and let yourself feel, not joy, but a cousin of it, something like contentment softened by exhaustion. By late afternoon, you're wrapping wool around your feet again. Another visit, this time to Bernard's. He mentioned needing help with a roof beam. You don't want to go, but he gave you lard yesterday. That makes you his for at least a day. You trudge through the snow. His door creaks open before you even knock. You bring rope, he asks. You nod. Of course you did. He always forgets his. Together you climb into the loft, balancing on frozen beams as you hoist the new cross support into place. It creaks ominously, but holds. Barely. Bernard hands you a small jar on the way out. Dried nettle tightly packed. For tea, he says. You nod. Tea's a strong word for boiled leaves, but you accept it with genuine thanks. Back home, the fire's still alive. That small miracle again. You boil water. Add the nettle. Pour it into wooden cups. It's bitter, earthy, but warm. You sip, then pass it around. The baby is asleep. The others follow one by one, drifting into that special kind of winter sleep, more surrender than rest. You stay awake a bit longer, listening to the wind outside and the steady breath of those around you. You've made it through another day. The snow still falls indifferent and beautiful. And inside this fragile little house, life goes on. You're the last to fall asleep and the first to rise. Again. The fire, though faint, is still there, glowing like an old friend who never left your side. You feed it quietly, careful not to wake the others. A few dry twigs, a breath of prayer. The flames stretch lazily, warming the stones around the hearth. You sit in the half-dark cup in hand, sipping warm water that smells faintly of ash. You pretend it's tea. You pretend a lot of things in winter, like pretending the ceiling won't drip tonight, pretending that cough in the corner is harmless, pretending that the little sack of barley in the pantry will last until the first thaw. Your thoughts are interrupted by the sound of soft footfalls, bare feet on cold floor. Your daughter. She doesn't say anything, just sits beside you and leans her head on your shoulder. You wrap an arm around her and feel how light she is. Bones and blanket. Her hair smells of smoke and dried rosemary. You press your cheek to the top of her head and listen to the silence together. After a while, she whispers, "Will we have milk today?" You want to lie, but you don't. Maybe you say, "We'll check." She nods satisfied with, "Maybe." Children are better at believing than adults are. Once the house begins to stir, the day begins like most others with chores. Cold chores. Chores that require your body long before your mind is ready. You pull on your boots, stiff and stiffening further, and head out to the lean-to. The cow shifts when she hears you approach. You check her water first. Icy again. You scoop it out and replace it with slush melted near the fire overnight. Not much, but better than nothing. Then you kneel. Your hands still half numb reach under her belly. You squeeze gently, rhythmically. At first, nothing. Then a warm trickle. Then another. She's giving. Not much, but enough to share. You whisper to her while you work nonsense words, old lullabies. She chews slowly, tail flicking lazily. You wonder if animals know how close they live to hunger, or if they just exist, simple, honest, trusting. Back inside, you warm the milk over the fire. It's barely enough to fill one cup. You divide it between the children first, each sip taken like communion. You watch as their shoulders relax just slightly. They smile. You do too. Breakfast is thin porridge again. It clings to the spoon like regret, but it's hot and hot matters. Today's plan is simple: repair. The fence, check the traps, mend the wool wrappings, and maybe try to barter for a little more grain. You wrap a few dried mushrooms in cloth and tuck them into your pouch. Someone might trade for that. On your way out, you stop by the old willow near the well. You place your hand on its trunk out of habit more than anything. It's a ritual now, a greeting to something older, quieter, still standing. The fence is exactly how you left it, pitiful. One of the posts has rotted clean through at the base. You prop it up with a stone and tie the split with twine. It won't keep out wolves, but maybe it'll confuse them. Confusion buys time. Time is everything. You check the traps next. One is empty, tripped. Another holds a small bird, barely feathered, barely alive. You end its life quickly, muttering an apology. It's light in your hand, feather and bone. Dinner for someone if you stretch it right. You make it back to the village square by mid-morning. Old Marta is there with her cart of odds and ends. You greet her with a nod and offer the mushrooms. She eyes them, then eyes you. For that, she says, "I'll give you half a sack of cracked grain." It's oat and rye mixed. Mostly oat. You nod. Fair. You sling the sack over your shoulder. It's heavier than expected, a good surprise. You thank her and she doesn't smile, but she touches your elbow gently. That's better than a smile. You stop by the chapel on your way back. Not to pray, just to sit. It's cold but dry. Quiet. The carved saints on the wall look down with blank eyes. One of them has lost a nose. The mice probably ate it. You sit for a few minutes, resting your eyes, letting your spine uncurl. You think about the stories the priest told you last Sunday of martyrs who walked through snow barefoot singing. You don't sing, but you walk. and maybe that's enough. Back at home, you add some of the new grain to the pot mix and a pinch of salt and start the fire again. Lunch smells better than it should. Your youngest dances in place when they see the steam. You smile and shoo them away from the pot. Let it thicken, you say, even though you know it won't. It never does, not really. You eat together, scraping the bowls clean. There's even enough left to save a bit for supper. You sit near the fire afterward, legs outstretched, spoon in hand, staring at the flame. You think of your mother. She used to hum while cooking. You try to remember the tune but can't. Just a fragment. Someone knocks. You open the door to find Bernard again. He's holding a bundle. "You'll want this," he says. It's wool, spun, thick, rough but whole. A wrap maybe from his sister. You take it stunned. "I have enough," he says. "You've got small ones." You nod. Words don't work right now. That night you wrap the new wool around your youngest and press your nose into their hair. The snow keeps falling, but inside the fire's strong, and so are you. The next morning begins in stillness, the kind of silence that settles over everything like a heavy woolen cloak. No wind, no birds, not even the creaking of timber under frost. Just a kind of hush, like the world is holding its breath. You crack the door open and immediately understand why. The snow has doubled overnight. Everything is buried. The path to the well, the pen, the outhouse, it's all one seamless white sheet now. Even the posts are gone, swallowed whole. Only the bent tops of fences and a few crooked chicken prints hint at where anything used to be. You step outside, boots crunching deep into the snow, and instantly regret not wrapping another layer around your feet. It seeps in fast like water, only crueler, colder, more persistent. The sky above is a smooth, pale gray. No sun, no breaks. Just the flat thread of more. You begin the work of clearing. Again. Always again. The board you use as a shovel groans with each push. Snow piles against your knees. You start with a path to the animal shelter. Your cow hasn't made a sound yet today, and that's never a good sign. When you reach her, you see why. The roof has begun to sag inward, heavy with snow. The lean-to creaks, and she stands far back, eyeing the drooping ceiling like it might come down at any moment. You speak to her gently, clear a spot around her hooves, and grab a pole to brace the crossbeam. It holds barely. You pat her flank, whisper something you don't quite remember saying, and start mucking out the floor. It's frozen, mixed with hay, and waste more ice than soil. The pitchfork bends under pressure. You bend too. But eventually she settles. You refill her bucket, check for milk, none today, and wrap your scarf tighter as you trudge back. Inside the house feels warmer, but only because the outside has become unbearable. The children are awake, huddled near the fire, wrapped in the new wool wrap from Bernard. They look like potatoes and cloth sacks' eyes, just barely visible under the folds. You smile just barely. No school today, you joke. No one laughs. That was never a real thing to begin with. You ladle out the leftover porridge from last night, reheated with a bit of snowmelt and a shred of lard for flavor. It's thin but hot. Everyone eats slowly, savoring the warmth more than the taste. After breakfast, it's mending day. You bring out the worn bundles of cloth, the bone needles, and what little thread you have left. You mend socks first, because nothing ruins a day faster than wet toes. Then mittens. Then the strap on your daughter's boots, which is frayed again from too many stomps through snowbanks. There's something meditative about the work. Push, pull not. The rhythm calms your mind. You watch the fire dance, listen to the scratch of thread through wool, and for a while you forget how much your back hurts. Your daughter brings you her doll, really just a bit of cloth wrapped around kindling with 2 buttons for eyes. One button has fallen off. You stitch it back carefully as though it were glass. She hugs the doll, presses its forehead to hers and whispers, "Thank you." You nod, eyes stinging for no reason. Later, you send the boys out to shake snow from the roof. It's risky, but necessary. You watch from the ground as they clamber up the ladder, really just a stack of crates and courage, and begin poking at the snow with a long stick. The snow falls in sheets like flour from the sky. One lands square on your youngest, who laughs so hard he nearly forgets to breathe. You forget how much that sound means until you hear it again. Inside the fire crackles with new life. You found an extra bit of birch kindling buried near the wood pile, forgotten under a sack of roots. It smells sweet when it burns smoky and clean. You boil water and drop in the last of the dried nettle Bernard gave you. It steeps into a cloudy green, bitter but not unpleasant. You sip slowly, let the warmth spread from your throat to your fingertips. The snow continues to fall. In the afternoon, you take a walk, just down the path around the field toward the edge of the woods. You need to move to breathe air that hasn't been through 6 lungs already. The silence out here is even deeper. You can hear your own heartbeat, your breath, the creak of your knees. The trees stand like ancient monks in white robes, heads bowed. You stop at the stump where you used to split wood. It's almost invisible now, just a round rise in the snow. You brush it clear with your sleeve, then sit, just for a minute. The sky has that heavy look again. You scan the horizon and notice smoke, thin wavering, curling up from Marta's chimney. Good. She's still got fire. You think of all the other homes, of who has food, who has warmth, who has enough of both, or neither. Historians still argue whether medieval villages truly functioned as tight-knit units or as loose collections of stubborn individuals just trying to outlast each other. But when you sit on this stump and think of the squirrel you gave away the wool, Bernard shared the dried herbs passed between neighbors, you know your answer. Before you head back, you gather a few sticks from under the fir trees. They're damp, but small. Good for starting a fire if dried by the hearth overnight. You bundle them in your cloak and trudge home. At the door, you stamp the snow from your boots and re-enter the warmth. The children look up. The fire still burning. You hang the damp sticks by the hearth and sink into your stool. Your shoulders slump. Your breath fogs in front of you, even indoors. Then, from the corner, a voice. Can we tell a story tonight? You look at the small face that asked it. Big eyes, frost-pink cheeks. You nod. Yes, you say. A story about spring. Because even though the snow is falling harder now and the roof creaks under the weight and the last of the oats are sitting in a cracked clay jar, you still remember spring. And tonight, that's what you give them. You begin the story the same way you always do, slowly with your voice low and warm like the fire beside you. It was a spring unlike any other, you say, the kind where the air smelled like bread before it was even baked. The children draw closer, their bodies bundled under blankets, eyes wide with expectation. One clutches the wooden doll with the re-stitched button. Another twirls a piece of dry grass between their fingers like it's spun gold. Even the baby, too young to understand, quiets at the tone of your voice. You tell them about green fields, ridiculously green, greener than moss greener, than nettles, the kind of green no snow could ever swallow. You describe how the buds broke through the soil like yawns after sleep, and how bees hummed a lazy tune through the morning light. They sigh. You talk about the first lamb, born in spring legs too long, ears too soft. About how it stumbled, fell, then found its footing and ran toward nothing in particular just because it could. Did we name it, your daughter? Asks. You pause. Yes, you say. We called it Clover. They nod pleased as though they remember it now too. You go on telling of days when the oven stayed warm from morning to dusk, when bread rose fast and full, when the milk bucket foamed over with cream. You speak of warm dirt under fingernails, strawberries too ripe to save, and sunburns that didn't hurt, only tickled. You embellish just a little. No one stops you, because tonight the snow presses hard against the house. The wind has begun to howl, a slow rising sound like an old song being hummed through cracks in the door frame. Outside is white and endless. Inside there's this. Your story drifts from spring into nonsense. You describe how mice held a secret dance under the moon and how the moon wore a wreath of daisies just to watch. The children laugh. Even you laugh. You haven't done that properly in a while. Laughter, bread, Clover the lamb, stories that bloom in the middle of a snowstorm. The fire pops, throwing a spark across the floor. You lean forward and stomp it out, then toss on another stick. The glow strengthens, painting everyone's faces in soft gold. After the story ends, no one says much. There's a kind of reverence in the quiet, the kind you feel after prayers, or after remembering what you've managed to forget. Eventually, they drift off one by one. You help them settle, pulling blankets over shoulders, adjusting wool socks, tucking straw into the gaps. You know every sigh, every shiver. You sit by the fire long after they sleep. This is your time, the sacred hour of embers and breath. You sip from your mug, just hot water now, and stare into the flickering flame. It moves like a dancer, slow and wild, free and contained all at once. Your mind wanders. You think of the field where your mother once planted garlic, of the way your father would hum while sharpening a scythe, of a boy you used to meet behind the chapel before the world became about keeping fires lit and bellies half full. You smile faintly, then frown. Outside, the wind screams. You wonder if the roof will hold, if the lean-to will stay up through the night, if the snow will bury everything you just dug free. But that's for tomorrow. For now, you take a piece of charcoal and scratch a mark onto the beam above the hearth. A tally. A silent count of how many nights you've made it through. This one makes 56, maybe more. You're not sure anymore, but you mark it anyway. A sound from outside. You freeze. Then you hear it again, distinct this time. A creak followed by a heavy thud. Not thunder, not wind. Something structural. You throw on your cloak and boots. The snow's halfway up your calves before you even get past the door. You trudge through it, fast heart hammering. The lean-to, you find it half collapsed. The beam you braced yesterday has cracked, snapped under the fresh weight. The roof has sunk, but not fully fallen. Your cow is still standing, eyes wild, breath visible in the cold, but she's unharmed. You move fast, scooping snow away from the entrance, whispering nonsense to calm her, clearing enough space for air and movement. You run for more wood, more rope, more prayers. By moonlight and instinct, you brace the lean-to again, sweat freezing to your collar, fingers numb, joints aching. It holds. It might not last, but it holds. You stroke her side once, then trudge back toward the house. The cold hits harder now that you've stopped moving. It bites at your cheeks, your wrists, the back of your neck. Your teeth chatter by the time you reach the door. Inside, the fire is low. You drop to your knees and feed it again, holding your hands so close they sting. The children are still asleep, undisturbed. The house smells of smoke, wet wool, and salt. You've grown used to it. You sit. Your breath slows. The wind continues outside, but you no longer fear it. Not tonight. You've saved what needed saving, told a story they'll carry, and held the roof up just a little longer. That's winter. That's everything. Morning comes, not with light, but with a shift in the cold. A stillness that wraps itself around your breath and whispers, "It froze harder last night." You wake with frost on your eyelashes, your knees curled up near your chest beneath the wool cloak. Around you, the others are still asleep, except for the cow. You can hear her groaning low through the walls, restless and resentful in her makeshift shelter. Understandably so. You rub your face, stretch your back until the joints crack, then sit up and listen. No wind, no birds, but the timbers creak again, this time from contraction, not collapse. Even the house is bracing itself. You move toward the fire. There are no flames left, only ash and stubborn coals, still alive. You kneel, gather some dried grass and splinters, and begin coaxing the heart back to life. Your fingers are stiff. Your breath is shallow, but the flame rewards you. It grows. The room brightens by a notch. From the pile of bodies behind you, your son stirs. Then a sniffle. Then a whimper, cold-induced, not fear. You place a hand on his back without turning just enough to say, "Still here, still safe." Once the fire is steady, you begin breakfast preparations, such as they are. There's a bit of grain left, enough for a watery gruel. You crush a clove of dried garlic into the pot more for the illusion of richness than taste. You stir with one hand and feed the fire with the other legs tucked under you like a squat monk in meditation. Soon the room fills with the faint smell of something edible, and that's all it takes. The others wake. One by one they sit up, their hair matted, their faces drawn, their bodies stiff from huddled sleep. They don't speak, they don't have to, they don't. They smell warmth and move toward it, bowls in hand. You portion out the gruel with practiced precision, one ladle per person, with a scrape left in the pot for whoever's weakest. That part always goes unspoken, but everyone knows. Today it's your daughter who gets the extra. You pretend not to notice when your son tries to scrape a bit from his own bowl into hers. After the meal, you check the stores. Grain is nearly gone. Dried beans, 2 handfuls. Dried meat, 1 strip greasy with age. Pickled cabbage, 3 jars. Dried nettles, 1 bundle brittle and fading. But then behind the root basket, wrapped in cloth, you find a treasure, a lump of beeswax forgotten since autumn. You run your thumb over its surface and smile. Candles, maybe 2. Enough for light when the sun dips early. You tuck it away again, not for today. Today you need to focus on the cow. You wrap your feet, pull on your cloak, and step outside. The snow has hardened overnight. Your boots crunch rather than sink. It's easier to walk, but crueler on your knees. You approach the lean-to, half expecting it to be gone, but it's still there. Crooked, crude, standing. Inside, she's lying down. You feel your heart leap, but then she moves softly and your shoulders drop. Still alive, just resting. She's shivering. You fetch more straw, more firewood, more prayers. You line her stall as thickly as you can and rub her neck to stimulate warmth. She noses your arm, then looks away as if embarrassed to need you. She gives no milk today. That's expected. You stay with her longer than usual, just sitting on a bucket, listening to her breathe. She calms you in a way. Her presence, her largeness, the fact that she remains steady through a world full of things collapsing. On the way back, you spot old Marta standing at her doorway, bundled in layers so thick she looks like a child wrapped for snow. You wave. She waves back, then gestures for you to come. You trudge across the white. Inside her home, it's warmer than expected. She's burned more wood than most, probably traded for it. A pot of broth simmers in the corner. She hands you a small cup. You take it. It's onion, maybe leek. You sip and feel it spread through your chest like kindness. "Got something for you," she says, rummaging through a cloth bag. She pulls out a chunk of black bread, dense, uneven, but clearly fresh. "I overbaked," she says. You smile at the lie. You reach into your pouch. You have nothing to trade but the small bone comb your daughter carved. You offer it. She turns it over, admiring the notches. "She's good," Marta says. "She is," you reply. You leave with the bread wrapped carefully in your scarf. Half will go to the children. Half you'll hide for tomorrow. Back home, the others are sitting near the fire again. You tear the loaf hand out pieces and tell them it came from a forest spirit who bakes once every snow moon. They laugh. Even the baby squeals. Later, you sit with your carving again. The spoon is nearly done. The handle now holds not just grooves, but the shape of a little leaf curled like a sleeping child. You sand it smooth with a strip of linen dipped in ash. It shines faintly. You'll give it to your daughter tonight. Not because she asked, but because she believed in Clover, the imaginary lamb. You watch the fire burn low, not dangerously low, just enough to soften the edges of the coal. The snow outside is falling again. The roof creaks, the timbers sigh. You pull your daughter close and tuck the finished spoon into her sleeping hand. Tomorrow she'll wake to it like it grew there, and maybe she'll believe it did. By dawn, the wind has returned. Not a howl this time, but a steady, slow breath, like something old and vast inhaling across the frozen earth. You hear it before your eyes, even open, that low hum through the rafters, rattling the loose board above the fire. The house creaks in rhythm as if agreeing to endure another day. You rise carefully, peeling yourself from the warmth of the sleeping pile. Your daughter's hand still clutches the carved spoon you gave her in the night. She's smiling in her sleep. You watch her for a moment, just long enough to remember why you get up each morning at all. The coals are low again. You stoke the fire back to life, and this time it catches quicker, like it too has decided not to argue today. A welcome gift. You begin the morning movements, boots, cloak water wood. Your body does it without your permission, now muscle and memory carrying you forward while your thoughts lag behind. It's only when you're pouring snow into the kettle that your mind catches up and wonders how many days left you don't answer. The calendar's long gone and the only clock is the feeling in your bones. Today you decide is for mending. Not just clothes, but anything that's given up a little too soon. The stool by the door, for example, has one leg that's grown tired of standing. You flip it over, fetch the last nail from the little pouch under the bench, and drive it in with a flat stone. Not perfect, but it holds. That's enough. You check the shutters, repack the moss in the cracks, rehang the drying socks that keep falling. Every small act you tell yourself is a line drawn against the cold. Outside it's gray again, always gray. The kind of gray that seems eternal, where even the horizon blurs into the sky. But the snow has stopped falling, and that's something. You step out to check the traps. Your breath forms clouds as you trudge down the side path near the woods. The drifts are up to your knees, crusted over but soft beneath. You break through with every step, boots, groaning legs, burning. The first trap is empty. The second, baited with the last bit of dried apple, holds a surprise. A rabbit, small, white, still. You kneel beside it, brush snow from its fur, and murmur your thanks. This is more food than you've seen in a week. It will be stew tonight. It will be warmth. You carry it home like a sacred thing cradled in your cloak. Back at the house, your eldest helps you prepare it, not with excitement, but with reverence. They've seen hunger enough to understand the weight of meat. You show them how to clean it properly, how to save every bit. Bones for stock, fat for frying, skin for patching if needed. You set the pot over the fire and begin the slow boil. You add a pinch of salt, a bit of dried cabbage, and 2 limp carrots that were hiding in the bottom of the basket. The scent that rises is real, rich, alive. The children gather close noses in the air. Rabbit, your son, asks eyes wide. You nod. They sit in silence, just watching it cook. No one asks when it will be ready. They already know it's not now. Later. Everything worth having in winter is later. While it simmers, you return to your patchwork projects. There's a cloak with a tear at the shoulder, a mitten with no thumb, a hat unraveling into memory. You sew with slow, steady hands, the thread like lifelines pulled tight. The sun makes a brief appearance, just a flicker of gold on the edge of the snow, reflecting in the icicles that hang from the eaves. You blink, and it's gone again. But you saw it. That's enough to keep going. Someone knocks at the door. It's Anselm, the old man with one good leg and a reputation for appearing only when something odd has happened. You open the door. He holds out a bundle. What's this, you ask? He shrugs. Found it buried under the snow behind the chapel. Thought maybe it was yours. You unwrap the cloth slowly, and inside is a loaf of bread. Real bread. Round, firm, with a burned crust and a faint scent of rye. It's not yours, but it's someone's. You both stare at it. Then he grins. It's yours now. You try to offer something in return, but he's already turning away, whistling a tune that hasn't been sung in years. Back inside, you add the bread to the evening meal. Slice it thin. Stretch it. When supper comes, no one speaks. The rabbit stew is poured with care into each bowl, and the bread is dipped, chewed, swallowed like the first rain after drought. It's the best meal you've had in weeks, maybe months. Afterward, you sit by the fire with full bellies and quiet hearts. The room hums with the kind of silence that follows comfort, not emptiness, but peace. You reach for your carving again, this time a small animal half-formed from a block of ash wood. Maybe a deer, maybe a dog. You let the blade find the shape. The children watch you, lulled by the rhythm of the strokes. Your daughter leans her head on your arm. Your son hums softly to himself. And in that moment, the cold feels far away. The snow outside presses against the walls. The wind moans in the chimney. The world beyond your door is still hard, still hungry. But in here tonight there is stew, there is bread, there is firelight and carved wood, and there is you, still standing, still stitching things back together, still drawing lines against the winter. You sleep that night like a stone in warm soil, not deeply, not without dreams, but wholly like the body itself has agreed to rest just for a little while. No coughing, no footsteps, just the slow exhale of a household held together by stew bread and firelight. When you wake, it's the light that gets you first, not bright, but different, warmer, softer. You sit up, slowly, joints groaning, and glance toward the window. There it is, sunlight, real sunlight. A thin golden beam presses through the oiled linen and dances on the floorboards. It moves with the breeze flickering against the soot-darkened wall like a timid visitor unsure if it's welcome. You don't speak. You just sit there and let it hit your face. Eyes closed, lips parted. The children notice too. Your daughter whispers, "Is it spring?" You don't answer. Not yet. Not because you don't want to give her hope, but because in this life, hope is something you unwrap gently, like eggs or old wounds. Still, the light has arrived, and that changes everything. You step outside into a world reshaped. The snow hasn't melted, but it's softened. The hard, bitter crust that used to cut at your boots now yields just a little under your steps. Water drips from the roof, slow and steady, a rhythm you haven't heard in months. The sky is no longer steel gray, but a pale blue, watery, hesitant, but blue all the same. You walk to the fence and rest your hands on the worn beam. Your cow lifts her head and stares at you, nostrils steaming as if to say, "I felt it too." You nod. Yes, maybe. Back inside, you warm the last of the stew, just enough for everyone to get a spoonful. No meat now, only the broth thickened with barley and memory. But that's all right. The sun is food enough today. After breakfast, you find yourself moving differently. Not quickly, not carelessly, but with purpose. You decide to do something foolish. You decide to clean. Not just sweep the floor or shake the bedding, but really clean. You open the shutters. You air out the blankets. You hang your socks in the sun like banners. The wind is still cold, but it smells like something you forgot existed: dirt. Real dirt. Alive beneath the ice. You unhook the herb bundles from above the hearth, discard what's molded, crumble what's still usable into jars. You make a small pot of tea with dried nettle and thyme. It tastes green, sharp, like waking up. By midday, the children are playing outside, slipping on thawing patches of mud and slush, laughing like fools. You don't stop them. You stand in the doorway, arms crossed, and just watch. Your neighbor Marta walks past, her skirt held up above her ankles. She grins. "You see it too," she says. You nod. "I don't trust it yet." She chuckles. "Neither do I." but I'll take the lie if it's warm. She presses something into your hand, a small pouch. Inside seeds. You blink. Where did traded a comb to a traveler weeks ago? Been saving them. For when the sun came back. You stare at the seeds. Tiny things. Dry. Lifeless. But full of promise. You don't say thank you. You just hold them to your chest and let her walk away. That night you make a stew from the pickled beets with one crumbling potato and a splash of the saved cooking fat. The bread's gone now, but no one complains. They eat slowly, savoring each bite, cheeks flushed from the outside air. After dinner, your daughter climbs into your lap without asking and pulls your arms around her. Tell the one again, she whispers, about the daisy moon and the birds with crowns. You smile. So you do. The fire crackles as you speak. The house smells faintly of beets and wool. Outside, the snow begins to melt in places, dripping down through the cracks in the eaves. And inside, your voice spins warmth through the rafters. And when the moon rose over the river that night, it didn't just glow, it sang. And every bird in the woods, even the grumpy ones, lined up in silence just to listen. They fall asleep with their heads on your lap, your arms aching from holding them too long, your knees stiff from sitting too still. But you don't move. Not yet. You let the fire burn low. You mark another tally on the hearth beam. Then you sit there in the golden quiet, thinking of the seeds in your pocket. Thinking of soil warming, of green things. Thinking of what it means to survive just long enough to plant again. The winter hasn't ended. Not truly. There will still be storms, still be hunger, still be nights when the fire forgets to rise. But today was a pause, a breath, a reminder that nothing, not even cold, lasts forever. You close your eyes and whisper to the dark, let the ground soften, let the roots wake, let us begin again. The next morning, the roof is dripping steadily. It's a different sound than snow. Snow lands soft whispering against the eaves like a secret, but meltwater plinks, sharp, defiant, alive. You sit on the threshold and listen. It hits the ground in uneven rhythm, pooling slowly in the grooves of earth made by your boots all winter long. The ice is pulling back from the edges of the field, now curling away like burned paper, revealing patches of dark soil beneath. You bend down, press your hand into the thawing ground, and feel it cold, yes, but no longer dead. Inside the house, the others are still sleeping. For the first time in weeks, you don't feel the need to rush. The fire held overnight for once. No scraping, no frantic coaxing of reluctant embers. It's still there, low and steady, as if even the flames are daring to believe in something warmer. You start the morning with a ritual you haven't done since autumn. You pull out the seed pouch Marta gave you. You pour the contents onto the table and spread them gently with your fingers. Some are small and round, some flat and pale, a few broken, but most are whole. Waiting. There's something sacred about seeds in winter, something ridiculous too. They are after all just dry husks, empty looking, forgotten, but your hands tremble slightly as you sort them because you know they carry futures, meals, strength, maybe even joy. You call the children. They gather sleepily, rubbing eyes, hair, wild mouths open from yawns. You show them the seeds without speaking. Their eyes light up as if you just poured a pouch of gold onto the table. Today you say we dig. They cheer, and the smallest one spins in a circle, nearly tripping over a wooden spoon. You eat a breakfast of hot water and a thin slice of beet shared between 4 bowls. No one complains. You've all eaten worse. Then comes the digging. The ground near the south wall of the house thaws first. It always does. Sheltered from the worst winds, kissed by morning light. It's just a narrow strip, barely a garden, but it's yours. And right now it's not frozen solid. That's all it needs to be. You fetch the hoe. It's rusted. The handle is split. You wrap a cloth around the grip and pretend it's new. Then you drive the blade into the earth. Once, twice, again. The children gather behind you, each with a job. One smooths the soil, another removes stones. Your eldest digs small holes with a stick, careful and slow. You work for hours, fingers caked in mud that smells like life. The sun stays out. The snow pulls back inch by inch as if respecting your labor. You plant half the seeds, some beans, some greens, a few mystery ones that Marta didn't name. You press them into the dirt like promises. By midday, your back aches. Your hands sting. Your knees are soaked. But the seeds are in. That night, you eat the last of the pickled cabbage and split the final crust of dried rye. It tastes of salt and thyme. But there's laughter now, the kind that bubbles up soft and sudden like something waking. Your daughter tells a joke that makes no sense. Your son mimics Bernard's lopsided walk until everyone's weeping with laughter. You don't stop them. You let the noise rise. Because joy in winter is not a luxury. It's an act of resistance. You mark another tally on the hearth beam. The wood is blackened now where your charcoal meets it each night, but still visible, still counting. After the children are asleep, you sit by the fire, the seed pouch back in your lap. You run your fingers over the cloth, the frayed corners, the soft bulge of the few seeds you didn't plant. Not yet. You're saving them for when you're sure the frost is truly gone. Or maybe because hope too needs rationing. You listen to the night. No wind, no wolves. Just the faint creak of snow melting off the roof and the occasional groan of the house settling back into its frame like a tired man stretching his spine. Tomorrow you'll check the fence again. Tomorrow you'll try to find more firewood. Tomorrow you might walk to the edge of the woods and see if the nettles are brave enough to show themselves. But tonight you close your eyes and imagine tiny roots unfurling beneath the soil. Quiet, slow, determined. You picture green. You picture hands pulling shoots from the earth, shaking off soil, holding them up like trophies. You picture summer, the real kind, with sweat behind your ears and bees dancing in the air and children with juice on their chins. It feels impossible. And yet, so did today. And here you are. You lean back. The fire sighs. The seeds rest in your lap like a sleeping infant. You survived another day. You planted something. And somehow that's everything. You rise before the others again. But something is different. The room smells faintly of wet earth and wool, not smoke and rot. The chill still bites, but it no longer gnaws. Outside, there's a kind of brightness pushing at the edges of the world. You feel it before you even touch the door, something loosening, melting, retreating. You step outside and blink. The snow is gone in places. Not all, not even most. But along the sides of the house and around the garden, stripped, bare soil shines like a secret finally told. You walk toward the fence barefoot just to feel it. It's still cold, but not cruel. You kneel and press your hand into the earth, damp, soft. It yields to your touch without fight. A small miracle. Behind you, you hear the door creak open. Your son steps out, arms crossed, blanket draped over his shoulders like a cape. Is it really spring, he asks. You glance up. The trees are still bare. The wind still carries a bite. But the air smells of thaw and sap, not death. You nod. Almost. He grins, then runs barefoot across the mud, shrieking at the cold. You watch him, arms folded, and shake your head. But your lips curve upward just a little. By midday, everyone is outside. You rake the soil again, clearing out the roots and pebbles left from the winter's grip. The youngest gathers worms like treasure. Your eldest is trying to build a scarecrow using a broken stool and 2 frozen gloves. It's lopsided floppy and completely useless, but they're proud of it, and so you let it stand. You send your daughter to the woods with a basket, telling her to look for signs, green shoots, mushrooms, nettles. She returns with half a basket of pine cones and 2 wild onions. You kiss her forehead like she's returned from a great journey. Later, you take stock of the house again. Now that the cold has begun to lift, you see the damage more clearly. The lean-to roof is bowing in 2 places. The south wall has a new crack. The door's latch is loose. The beam above the hearth sags just slightly. You trace its line with your eyes and wonder how many more winters it can take. You won't fix it all now, but you'll begin. That's the theme of these days, now beginning again. You start with the latch. It's a small job. A bit of wood shaved into a wedge, hammered into place with the back of a spoon. It holds. You smile. One thing done. That's how you measure progress now, one held door at a time. You carve a new hook for the window shutter next, using a leftover bit of fencing and your pocket knife. Your hands remember the shape before your mind finishes thinking it. The curve, the notch, the little flourish, you always add that no one notices but you. By afternoon, the sun warms your back. You sit on the stoop with your sleeves rolled up a bowl of water and 2 wild onions between your knees. You peel them slowly, letting the sharp smell rise and burn in your nose. It makes you cry just a little, and you let it. You slice them, toss them into the stew pot with a pinch of salt and 1 remaining carrot. The broth is thin, but the taste is strong, like memory, like laughter from long ago. You eat outside. The ground is dry enough now to sit on, and the warmth in the soil is better than any cushion. The children eat with their hands, scooping with crusts of hard bread or hollowed-out spoons. One of them tries to feed the scarecrow. You pretend not to see it. They pretend not to laugh. That night, after everyone's asleep, you take out the seeds again, the ones you saved. You hold them in your palm and whisper their names, if only to yourself. Bean, barley, dill, cabbage. You'll see the sun again. You step outside into the night air barefoot and walk to the garden strip. The moon is high, the stars are clear. You kneel by the soil and dig small holes with your fingers. You plant 3, only 3, just to test the air. You cover them gently, then press your palms flat against the dirt. You don't speak, you don't pray, but you listen to the creak of the trees, to the breath of the earth, to the sound of everything waking up at once. And when you return to the house, you don't close the door all the way. You leave it open a crack, for the breeze, for the future, for spring. The next morning, you find a green shoot. It's barely a whisper, thin as thread-shy as a newborn, but it's there, pushing up through the soil near the edge of the garden where the sun sits longest. You kneel beside it, not daring to touch, just watching, just marveling. 1 leaf, 2 if you count the curl at the tip. You don't smile right away. You simply blink, press your hand to your chest, and breathe slowly. Because this is no longer a story you tell the children, no longer a someday. This is proof. Something is growing. Something is answering back. You call the children one by one, not with shouts, but with quiet beckoning, and they gather around like pilgrims. Your daughter kneels beside you, eyes wide. "Is it one of ours?" she whispers. You nod. Your youngest tilts his head. "What if it's a weed?" You pause, then say, "Then it's the bravest weed I've ever met." They giggle, but they stay quiet after that, as if speaking too loud might scare it back into the ground. That day you tend the soil like a sacred thing. You pat down loose corners of the rows, remove a rock you'd missed the first time, and retie the strings that mark where seeds were planted. The children do their part. Someone builds a circle of stones around the green shoot. Another adds a stick to keep the hens away. The sun stays out longer now. By midday, you shed your cloak while hauling wood. Your undershirt smells like old effort and older soap, but the breeze against your arms feels almost human. You stop and let it run across your skin like a blessing. You walk down to the stream, unsure if the ice has melted. It has. The water runs shallow but fast, dragging twigs and leaves like little rafts. You kneel, cup your hands, and drink. Cold, pure, no ash taste, no smoke. Just water and the sound of it moving. For a moment you stay there, eyes closed, forehead resting on your wrist. Then you fill a small jug and carry it home, swinging gently at your side. Inside, your son is rubbing oil into the wood of the table with the corner of his shirt. He says it's to make it look less tired. You ruffle his hair and join him. The table doesn't shine, not really, but it stops looking like it's given up. That night, you make a stew with a few of the dried beans, the last bit of barley, and those 2 wild onions from the forest. You add water from the stream instead of melted snow. The difference is small, but you notice it. Everyone eats quietly, but their cheeks are pink, their hands less shaky. Even the baby kicks a little after each spoonful, like she's remembering how to be noisy. After dinner, someone brings up the idea of building a fence around the entire garden. A real one, not just twine and sticks, but posts, crossbeams, maybe even wire if you can find it. You nod, not because you think it's likely, but because it feels good to make plans. That night you tell a story, not of lambs or daisy moons, but of your childhood. You talk about the first time you helped plant spring barley with your father, how he let you carry the bag of seeds even though it dragged in the dirt behind you, how you dropped half of them along the way and he didn't scold you, just laughed and said, "Well, maybe we'll grow something wild." The children laugh too, imagining little stalks sprouting in random places. Your daughter says, "Maybe that's what we saw today. One of the wild ones," maybe you say. Maybe wild things grow first. After they sleep, you sit by the hearth with your tools, not just for carving this time. You bring out the broken basket from under the bench. Its rim has split and the weavings come loose along one side. It used to belong to your grandmother. It deserves another season. You work slowly, strip a few fresh twigs, rewrap the bindings, reinforce the base. The result is crooked but stronger than before. You set it beside the door and whisper, "One more job for you yet." Before bed, you walk out to the garden once more. The sky is clear. The stars are more visible now, no longer hidden by winter haze. You look up, not expecting anything, and see the faint shimmer of frost on the far end of the field. The cold still lingers, but not in the garden. You check the chute. Still standing, still reaching. You crouch beside it, press your hand into the dirt once more and whisper, "Keep going." Then you whisper it to yourself, because spring is coming, yes, but it still asks everything of you. You return to the house, close the door, not tight, just enough, because tomorrow that second leaf might open, and you'll be there, watching, rooted, ready. You wake to birdsong, faint at first, hesitant, like someone clearing their throat before speaking. But it's there, real. A chirp, then a pause, then another higher, brighter. You sit up slowly, the blanket falling from your shoulders, your body still stiff with the memory of cold. But your ears are telling you the truth. The birds have returned. You walk to the door, barefoot, without even thinking. The wooden floor is still cool but not biting, not hostile. You open the door and step outside into the blue morning. The air is sharp, but the sun is already warming the roof. You hear water dripping in 10 different places. The snow has retreated further in the night, and the ground, wet, grooved soft, is beginning to look like earth again. You scan the garden first. Your breath catches. 4. There are 4 green shoots now. Not just the brave little weed from 2 mornings ago, but others. 2 where you planted barley. 1 beside the edge where you tucked those mystery seeds Marta gave you. You walk between the rows, knees damp from the melting frost, hands hovering just above the leaves like they're candle flames. Everything is still fragile, but it's real. The children join you quietly without instruction. One by one, they crouch beside you, inspecting each green stem as if it were treasure. "Do we water them?" your daughter asks. You pause, then say, "We watch first, then we water." Like people, she says, nodding. You make breakfast with a strange lightness in your limbs. There's not much left, half a jar of fermented cabbage and one heel of blackened bread, but it's easier to eat when the garden gives you something to look forward to. The children dip bits of bread into warm water to soften it, chewing slowly, deliberately. No one asks for more. They know. After breakfast, you decide to walk to the forest edge. You haven't done that in weeks, maybe months. The snow made it impossible. And before that, you were too tired, too unsure. But today you carry the old basket you just mended and head for the line of trees. The path is muddy and uneven. Ice still clings in the shadows, and your boots sink with each step, but you press on. By the time you reach the forest line, you're panting. But then you see it. Green. Not much, not loud. But here and there, beneath the brambles, the delicate frill of early nettles, tight curls of fiddlehead ferns, patches of moss that shimmer with dew. You kneel, brush aside a few twigs, and find a patch of wild garlic. You smile. You pick slowly, respectfully. Just enough. You leave more than you take. That's the rule. By the time you return home, your basket holds wild greens, a handful of early shoots, and one small mushroom. The children rush to see, crowding around you with open mouths and wide eyes. You boil water, slice the greens, and toss them into the pot with a pinch of salt. Lunch smells of earth, of something new. Even the broth looks different, greener, richer, cleaner. You ladle it into bowls, and everyone sips quietly, savoring the warmth not just in their bellies but in their hearts. After the meal, you begin your next task, repairing the fence. You've put it off long enough. The posts are crooked, some rotted. Others have been pushed down by snow or age or both. You set the children to gathering stones for the base while you hammer in new stakes made from split branches. It's hard work. The soil is soft in some places, still frozen in others. Your hands blister by the second post. But you don't stop. You don't even think of stopping. Because this fence means more now. It means protection not just from animals, but from chance, from loss, from forgetting what you fought for all winter. The sun stays with you all day. By late afternoon, your back aches and your palms are raw, but the garden is surrounded by a real border, again low and rough. Yes, but honest. Earned. The scarecrow stands proud in the middle, hat, askew, arms crooked. You nod to it. It nods back in your imagination. That evening you light a candle. You hadn't planned to. Candles are for nights without fire, for emergencies. But this night feels different. Ceremonial. The flame glows soft against the walls. The children sit in a circle near the hearth. You join them with the carved deer you've been shaping for days. You pass it to your son. It's for the garden, you say, for the edge, to remind us what's watching. He runs his fingers over its back, nods solemnly, and places it on the windowsill facing the rose. No one asks questions. They understand. That night before sleep, you step outside one more time. The moon is bright. The stars hum. Somewhere in the trees, an owl calls out a low, steady note that rolls across the field. You walk to the garden and crouch by the shoots. You press 2 fingers gently into the soil, still damp, still holding. And then you whisper, not loud, not brave, just steady. You're not alone. You walk back inside, close the door, and for the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you bolt it. Because tonight you are not guarding against the cold. You are guarding what has begun. Morning comes with a scent you haven't smelled in months, wet grass. It drifts in through the cracks near the window, mixing with the fading smoke of the hearth and the wool warmth of sleep. You open your eyes slowly, not to alarm, not to hunger, but to the soft call of the living world returning. Outside, a breeze shifts the linen curtain. A bird calls. Then another answers. You sit up without groaning. The fire has gone low again, but you don't rush. The house is warmer now, just slightly, but enough to make you believe this new warmth is no longer an accident. You open the door and step out into morning. The mist hugs the ground like a secret. The garden is silver with dew, and your patched fence stands there quietly noble. Beyond it, a different world puddles glinting in ruts, trees no longer skeletal but swelling at the buds, hinting at leaves curled tight in sleep. You kneel again at the edge of the row where the first green shoot had appeared. Now there are 10 tiny declarations of survival, of return. The barley has begun to uncurl. The beans push upward, dragging little mounds of soil behind them. You run your hand gently above the rows, not touching, not yet, just blessing them with your shadow. You mark the moment in your head. Not by date, dates have no place here anymore, but by feeling. This is the morning you begin again. Inside, the children are already awake, blinking sleep from their eyes, feet bare against the floor. They move with less hesitation now. The youngest speaks first. I think the scarecrow scared something away last night. You look at the crooked figure, his hat askew, his arms uneven. I think you're right, you say. For breakfast, you boil water with wild onion and a pinch of salt. It isn't enough, not by any standard, but everyone eats with a hunger that feels different. Not the gnawing need of starvation, but the return of appetite. You watch the children chew and notice color returning to their cheeks. Their laughter comes easier. Their eyes stay open longer. After the bowls are scraped clean, you begin the morning work. Today is for tending. You and your eldest walk the perimeter of the fence, testing each post, tightening twine, adjusting stones at the base. The ground is spongy beneath your boots, no longer frozen, not yet dry. Your knees get wet. You don't care. Your daughter sings softly as she gathers kindling. The tune is old, older than the cold, older than even your memory. One of those melodies passed down by whisper, not by name. She hums as if she's always known it, and maybe she has. The baby, now old enough to toddle, waddles from one spot of sunlight to another, hands outstretched as if trying to catch the warmth itself. By midday, the sun is high enough that you shed your outer layer. You hang the damp cloak over the fence, let it steam in the light. Then you do something you haven't done since before the snow. You lie down, just in the grass at the edge of the field. The ground is still wet. The sky is huge. And for a while you simply breathe. Above you, a hawk circles lazy wide loops. You trace its path with your finger like a child. You close your eyes and listen to the earth. Water moving under roots. Insects waking under logs. The shift of soil as something green grows where something died. You return to the house and find a surprise. Marta is there. She's seated on your step, a bundle in her lap. Her cheeks are red with wind. Her boots are caked with mud. I thought maybe you'd trade, she says, standing. She hands you a wrapped cloth. Inside, dried mushrooms, wild thyme, 2 slices of smoked fish. You exhale softly. Too much. Not enough, she shrugs. I saw your fence. You offer her the repaired basket and return the one you mended 2 nights ago. She takes it without a word, but runs her fingers over the handle as if she knows its story. Before she leaves, she looks toward the garden. You planted early, she says. You nod. I was ready. She nods back, then says something strange. Don't forget joy. You frown. What? She steps down into the mud. That's what we always forget first. And then she's gone. That night you make stew. Real stew. Fish, mushrooms, onion, and thyme. You serve it in the largest bowl you have and you don't water it down. Everyone eats in silence for a while. Then someone says, "It smells like celebration." You nod but don't speak. Instead, you fetch a little cloth from your storage nook. Inside is something you've saved not for hunger, but for the right moment, a small jar of honey crystallized at the bottom, wrapped in wool and string. You open it carefully, scoop out one small spoonful. You pass it around. Each child dips a fingertip, tastes it. And for the first time in months, there are tears at the table, not from grief, but from sweetness. You sit back, hands in your lap, watching the candle flicker. And for the first time since the snow fell, you believe in tomorrow. Not just because you must, but because you want to. It rains the next day. Not snow, not sleet, not frozen mist that cracks on window panes, but rain. Gentle, persistent, the kind that taps on the roof like a visitor too polite to knock. The kind that smells of clean soil and returning worms. You stand at the doorway and watch it fall, arms crossed, a shawl draped around your shoulders. The children sleep longer this morning, lulled by the sound. You let them. No one rushes today. Rain is slow work. It doesn't demand, it seeps. Out in the field, your rows are dark and glistening. The garden soaks it up like a long-lost friend. Each green shoot leans toward the sky, trembling under droplets that cling like jewels. The scarecrow's arms droop soggy but loyal. Even he seems content. You leave the door open. The rain slides down the doorway in long ribbons. A few drops reach the wooden floor. You don't mind. Let the house breathe, let the air move. Let the damp wash away the last of winter's breath. You set a pot outside to catch rainwater cooler, fresher than snow melt. It fills fast. By mid-morning, the children rise one by one. They gather around the doorway, hair-tousled cheeks flushed from dreams, toes peeking beneath too short wool trousers. Can we go out? Your son asks, already holding a stick. You nod once. Leave your socks inside. They bolt into the drizzle like pups freed from a leash, shrieking as mud sucks at their heels and water soaks their hems. You watch them run in circles, splash puddles, chase each other with handfuls of wet grass. You don't call them back. You don't tell them to quiet down. This is joy, the kind Marta reminded you not to forget. You fetch the comb and begin brushing the youngest hair while she sits near the hearth, watching the rain like it's a performance. Her hair has grown longer than you realized. You braid it loosely, knotting the ends with a piece of twine. She looks up at you and smiles. It feels like a festival, she says. You nod. A very quiet one. No, she insists the rain is singing. And now that she said it, you hear it too. Not music exactly, but rhythm. A lullaby tapped gently into the roof and soil. You boil water with a few nettle leaves from your last gathering, add a piece of dried apple peel for sweetness. The result is light, sharp, and surprisingly comforting. The children drink it warm from wooden cups, rainwater still drying on their foreheads. In the afternoon, you take out the seed pouch again. There are a few left. You run your fingers over each one, feeling for cracked soft spots. Most are still firm, still waiting. You decide to plant the last of them before the next frost dares to surprise you. You walk barefoot to the garden, the ground soft under your soles, cool but not biting. The soil yields easily beneath your fingers now. You kneel feeling more priest than peasant. You whisper again as you bury them one by one for food, for strength, for the ones who didn't make it. The rain continues. Not harder, not louder, just there. A steady presence. When you return inside, the children have begun to build a structure from the firewood, stack 2 logs balanced across 3 stones, a roof of damp cloth from the laundry line. You ask what it is. A house for spring, they say. You nod, not correcting them. It's a better name than anything you could invent. You offer them string and twigs. They decorate it with feathers, leaves, a bent spoon, a cracked button, and the shell of an old nut. It looks ridiculous. It looks perfect. Even the baby waddles over and places her own contribution, a rock with a worm on it. Everyone claps like it's a crown. You hang your damp cloak near the fire, then fetch the last chunk of smoked fish from the top shelf. It's thin, curled from age, but edible. You flake it into a pot with the last of the onions and some soft cabbage. The scent is salty and earthy, like a harbor in a storm. Dinner is quiet, reverent. Each bite is slow. The children dip hard bread into the broth, scraping bowls clean with their fingers. You drink your portion, last warm liquid sliding down your throat like forgiveness. After dinner, you bring out the wooden deer again. You place it at the center of the children's new house for spring, then add your own offering, the smallest candle you've saved, still wrapped in cloth. You light it with care. The room glows. It is not bright, but it is alive. You sit around it, all of you, cross-legged on the floor. You tell them a story not of saints or dragons or brave knights, but of a seed. Just one, lost under ice, forgotten. Then one day, hearing something beneath the soil, something warm, and turning its face toward it, you describe how it broke open not because it was weak, but because it had to become something else. Your daughter whispers, like us, and you nod. Yes, exactly like you. After the story, you sing. It's a song you haven't sung in years. Your voice cracks in the beginning, but then grows steadier. The children hum along, some with the right notes, others chasing behind. You don't correct them. It's not about being right, it's about being together. When the candle burns low, you pinch it out with your fingers and carry the deer back to the window. You place it next to the sprouting onion your son started in a cup, a forest beginning. You go to bed without fear tonight. No checking the fire 5 times. No listening for wolves. Only rain. Only breathing. Only becoming. The rain has stopped by morning. What it leaves behind is not silence, but softness. A landscape that seems to exhale relieved. Puddles ripple gently. The soil glistens like wet bread crust. Even the trees seem to stretch a little taller, as if shaking loose the last weight of winter from their limbs. You step outside barefoot again. You don't even think about it now. The ground is damp, but it welcomes you. No longer frozen, no longer hostile. It yields just enough to remember what bare feet feel like. You move slowly through the garden eyes, scanning the rows, and you freeze. The green has doubled, not in height but in number. New shoots, tiny, defiant, impossibly green, have emerged where yesterday there was only damp earth. Some lean left, others curl. One has already split its first leaf. Each one fragile, each one brave. You kneel and count. 1, 2, 3, 17. 17 sprouts. Your throat tightens a little, not with fear, not even with joy. Just the deep, breathless awe of something working, something responding to your effort, something growing. The children find you kneeling in the mud. They don't ask questions. They simply kneel beside you, mirroring your posture, their hands hovering over the soil as if it's sacred, which now it is. Should we name them? Your daughter whispers. You almost say no, then you shrug. Why not? And so begins the naming. The tallest one becomes Hearth because it's closest to the center. The one near the edge is Brave. The one that looks like it might not make it is Hope. The smallest is simply Maybe. They whisper each name like a blessing. That afternoon, you gather everything that can be repurposed. Cloth for shade covers old spoons for digging stones for edging the beds. Even the bent nails from the door frame find new life as garden markers pressed into the soil beside each row. You take an old bit of board from the broken fence and carve words into it. Slowly with your knife, we begin again. You drive it into the ground at the edge of the garden near the scarecrow, who nods at you in his wind-tilted way. The sun is out and full by midday. You open every window in the house. The breeze carries out the stale smoke, the mildew, the long winter sighs trapped in corners. It carries in bird song, leaves rustling, and laughter from your own mouth, unbidden, sudden. You find yourself smiling at nothing. The baby finds a slug and tries to kiss it. Your son yells, Your daughter scolds. You wipe mud from her lips with your sleeve, half laughing, half crying. You haven't felt this alive since the first snow fell and everything went quiet. Later, you sit by the fire with a small piece of cloth and begin to stitch. Just a patch, just a sleeve. But the rhythm is familiar. The thread glides through your fingers like memory. You sew not because it's urgent now, but because it feels good to repair. The door creaks open. Marta steps in with her hands full. She brings a bowl of foraged greens and something miraculous, a loaf of oat bread still warm. You nearly cry when you touch it. Extra from yesterday, she says. I made it too big. You don't believe her, but you don't argue. You share tea. Not nettles today, but mint fresh from her windowsill pot. She offers a leaf to the baby who tries to eat it sideways. You all laugh. You named your plants, Marta asks, eyeing the markers in your garden. You nod. She tilts her head. You name the dying one Hope. You nod again. She chuckles. Braver than I am. That evening you slice the bread into thick pieces. You toast it by the fire and rub it with garlic and oil. The children eat with both hands, mouths full, eyes closed. One of them murmurs, "This is what happiness tastes like." You smile and think, no, this is what enough tastes like. After dinner, you gather everyone by the garden again. The sun is low now, burning gold behind the trees, casting long shadows across the rows. The air smells of basil and damp earth. The scarecrow watches still and satisfied. You light the small candle again, the one you thought you'd save for emergencies. But you realize this is an emergency of wonder, of gratitude. You pass the candle around, letting each child hold it for a moment before placing it back beside the carved deer on the windowsill. You say nothing. The children say nothing. There's no need. That night you lie on your mat, hands behind your head, staring at the dark ceiling above. You listen, not for threats, not for wind or creaking beams, but for the quiet, steady breath of a home in spring. You think of the seeds, of the names whispered into the dirt, of Marta's warm bread, of the way the rain carried something away and gave you something new in return. And just before sleep takes you, you murmur, "We're coming back, not to the world as it was, but to the world as it might be." And that finally is enough. The next morning, your body wakes before your mind does. You blink into the half-light of dawn, unsure what stirred you. No clatter, no cry, no cold. Just a quiet nudge from somewhere deep in your chest. You lie still a moment, listening to the calm. It's not silence, it's birds. So many birds. Chirping from rooftops, from trees, from somewhere just beyond the garden fence. Not the lonely winter calls, but spring voices, bright, layered, confident. You hear them argue and sing and tease one another in little bursts of joy. You rise without your usual groan. Your joints still ache, but the ache feels different now, earned, not endured. You stretch your arms overhead, run your fingers through your hair, and notice your hands smell faintly of garlic and smoke. The baby stirs next to you, then settles again. You press a kiss to her temple and rise, careful not to wake the others. The floor is warm, where the hearth still glows faintly. You drop a few logs on it, stir the coals, and let it bloom. You step outside. Dawn spills gold across your yard. Mist hovers low, lit from within like breath. Your eyes fall instantly to the garden. It's not just green anymore. It's alive. Little rows of beans now reach higher than your ankle. Tiny fronds of parsley wave gently in the breeze. Even, maybe the frailest of the sprouts has added a second leaf, stretching boldly toward the sky like a child asking to be picked up. You crouch beside it and smile. "I underestimated you," you whisper. Behind you, the door creaks. Your eldest joins you, rubbing sleep from her eyes, then rests her chin on your shoulder. "It's a forest," she says dreamily. You nod. "One that feeds us." You send her inside to wake the others gently. Today is a day for doing. The list unfolds itself in your head. Turn the compost clear, the gutter scrub, the big pot, mend the chicken coop's latch, and check if the wild dandelion has returned near the old stone wall. You boil porridge first, thick with the last of the raisins you've hidden away for weeks. When the children taste them, their eyes widen like it's the feast of saints. You sip yours slowly, watching their joy quietly. After breakfast, everyone splits off with a task. Your son and daughter drag old planks toward the coop hammer in hand. The baby toddles around behind the dog, who now follows her like a reluctant older sibling. You carry the empty basket down the hill toward the edge of the woods, past the moss-covered rock where the sun hits just right. You find the dandelions, bright yellow faces clustered together like gossiping grandmothers. You pick the youngest one, soft and bitter and full of spring medicine. You also pluck wild mint, a handful of chickweed, and one perfect violet for the baby to hold. The walk back is slow, thoughtful. A breeze follows you, brushing your neck like a whisper. Almost there. At home, you steep the herbs and dandelion greens into a clear tea, cool it, and set it in a clay jug for later. You wrap the mint in damp cloth and tuck it near the window. Midday sun pours in. The children bring you a worm, not for eating, just for admiration. You hold it gently, then return it to the soil. He's got work to do. The boy nods solemnly, as if you've just spoken poetry. In the afternoon, Marta visits again. She doesn't knock anymore. She just steps in with a smile and a question. How's Hope doing? You take her hand and lead her to the garden. When she sees Hope, now taller than maybe leaves spread like open arms, she laughs. I owe that plant an apology. You share a meal of flatbread, garlic paste, and the tiniest radish you've ever pulled from the ground. She tells you about a new calf in her shed, and a neighbor who claims to have seen a fox near the river again. You talk about fences, yes, but also about the way spring smells like apples before they exist. When she leaves, she presses something into your palm. It's a sprig of rosemary tied with a red string. For your window, she says, to keep the good in. You don't know if it works, but you believe her anyway. That evening, the children gather dandelions and press them into the scarecrow's hands. Now he doesn't look so lonely. He looks like part of the family. You light the fire early, not from need, but for comfort. You pull the blanket from the chest, the one you'd hidden away, fearing it would wear thin too soon. Now you wrap it around all the children at once, forming a pile of limbs and laughter on the floor. You sit behind them and brush their hair with your fingers, telling a story, as you do about a woman who survived the coldest winter. About a garden that grew despite every reason not to. About a little girl who believed a plant could be named Hope. You don't finish the story. You don't need to. They're living it now. Before bed, you check on the seedlings one last time. You kneel by each one, brushing soil, gently straightening their tiny stems with whispered encouragement. You lean against the fence post and look up. The moon is soft tonight, wearing a halo of mist. You breathe it in. You survived the wolves that never came, the hunger that tried to outlast you, the cold that questioned your right to remain. And still you're here, not untouched, but unbroken. You whisper to the moon, not as prayer, but as promise, I'll keep growing too. You wake this morning not to rain or frost or even bird song, but to quiet. A gentle, complete stillness, the kind that wraps around the house like a shawl. No wind shaking the shutters. No creaks from the old beams, just warmth, settled, content. You stretch slowly, not from stiffness, but from satisfaction. The children are still asleep, curled into one another like fox kits in a den. Even the baby snores softly, a thumb resting against her cheek like she fell asleep mid-thought. You rise and move through the house barefoot. The floor greets you like an old friend, and the fire, now just coal, still offers a faint red glow. You don't need to stir it. Not yet. You stand at the window, hands wrapped around a warm cup of nettlemint tea, and gaze out. The garden is glowing. Sunlight slices through the thin mist that rises off the fields. Each green shoot in your rose wears a crown of dew. The scarecrow stands straighter, somehow proud of his little kingdom. Even the maybe plant you're most uncertain now leans toward the light with no hesitation. You step outside into it. The air smells of moss ash and something sweet you can't name. Maybe it's the grass. Maybe it's the first bloom you haven't spotted yet. Maybe it's just relief. You begin your walk. You've taken to doing this every morning now. Not far, just a slow circle around the edge of the garden down toward the stone wall and back past the coop. You check each fence post, each leaf, each shadow. Not for danger, but for presence. Life. Signs that you are not alone in this world. And you're not. You see it in the web between two fence rails glistening in the morning sun. You see it in the cluster of chickweed creeping near the porch. You hear it in the hush of a breeze that makes the trees hum like a distant lullaby. Marta arrives before noon. This time she brings something wrapped in cloth, 3 eggs, a scrap of butter, and half a carrot. Luxury, she says with a wink. You nod and offer her in return the first handful of your dandelion salad and a small sprig of parsley from the row marked Brave. She accepts it like it's gold. You sit together near the window, speaking in low voices about the rhythm of days, about how food tastes different now because you notice it, about how even sleep feels deeper, softer, like it belongs to you again. She tells you someone downriver has begun singing again in the evenings. I thought it was the wind, she says, but it was a woman, singing while stirring her pot. You both smile. You want to sing too, but you wait. That afternoon, the children take to cleaning the old tools. They scrub rust from spades, wrap new cloth handles around broken ones, and sort nails into little pouches. You supervise from a sun-drenched step, sewing patches onto a cloak too worn to wear, but too dear to toss. The baby discovers a snail and carries it around like royalty. When it retracts into its shell, she gasps as if it's playing hide-and-seek just for her. You laugh out loud. No one shushes you. By evening, the air begins to shift. Not cold, just different. You sense it in your ribs more than your skin. The kind of change that says, it's time to rest now. So you make soup. Not because you need it, but because it soothes. You use the carrot, the last of the onion, a handful of greens, and 1 precious egg, cracked and gently stirred into ribbons. The broth smells like the inside of a lullaby. You call the children in. They pile their treasures at the doorstep: twigs, stones, a beetle wing, a scrap of string they found buried in dirt. You praise each one as if it were rare and holy. In a way, they are. You eat together on the floor again, bowls cupped in hands, feet crossed under blankets. The baby feeds her soup to the snail, who doesn't object. No one speaks much. The silence isn't awkward. It's earned. Afterward, you light the last candle. You place it in the little house for spring that still sits in the corner, now adorned with pressed flowers and chicken feathers. The deer carving stands watch beside it. The flame flickers once, then steadies. You gather everyone. This is your ritual now. You sit in a circle, touch shoulders, and close your eyes. No prayers, no chants, just breathing, just being. The children begin to hum. 1 low note, soft and steady. You join in. Then Marta, who stayed behind. It's not a song. It's a sound. A remembering. A reminder. A root. Later, when the candle burns low, you tuck the children in gently. You press kisses into their hair, not from obligation, but because your heart insists on it. You sit by the fire, one last time, hands folded. You remember the first night of this winter, how afraid you were, how loud the wind felt, how small the house seemed, how the hunger in your stomach echoed in your chest. Now you are full of soup, of air, of the quiet joy of having come through. You close your eyes and whisper one last thing to the dark: we made it. And the dark does not reply, not with words, but with stillness, peaceful like a nod from the universe. So you rise. You lie beside the baby, curl your arm around her small warm body, and let your breath match hers. And as your eyes close, the candle flickers out. A soft hush settles. A new season begins. And now, let it all fall away. The cold mornings, the endless scraping for wood, the hunger that sat like a stone in your belly, they're behind you now. You've walked the hard road. You've knelt in the dirt. You've whispered into the dark and still woken to light. The wind has gentled. The birds sing now, not to warn, but to welcome. The earth no longer tests you, it embraces you. And your hands, once cracked and weary, are softening, healing. They've planted more than food. They've planted tomorrow. Let your shoulders sink a little deeper into the blanket. Let your breath lengthen. Let the fire in your imagination burn low, then flicker, then turn to coals. All around you, the world is still not because it's empty, but because it's enough. You are safe. You are fed. You are home. No wolves tonight. No frost in the corners. Only the whisper of green things growing quietly just beneath the surface. Only the steady beat of a heart that kept going. Yours. So rest now, brave traveler. You've earned it. The story will still be here when you wake. Good night. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.